and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose.
Hear me, my son. I alone will tell you the truth. Death is the only punishment here.
Death is in our air, in sea, in earth. It can come for us at any moment. To show your true heart is to risk your life. Enemies are everywhere and friends nowhere. Life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose. Remember, we live and we die. We control nothing beyond that.
This is not where we die. We should be corpses. But here we are. Whatをしておる? 私死ぬ。村人を死なない。何様のつもりじゃ? 私死ぬ。村人死なない。 Don't you understand? I came here to use you. To use you! I fed you shit. I fed you shit. Dickie. Dickie. Dickie! Fuck it. We live and we die. 私安人はこの命をもっておいおい気が済んだのであればあの船を立て直しわしのために水軍を作るがよい。
And welcome one, welcome all to the continuation of the Shogun series finale discussion. And I gotta say, I mean, it was just powerful scene after powerful scene after powerful scene in the finale. Although I do have my certain critiques about how it ended. We were discussing this just before we went live. I feel like the individual character arcs for every character we got on Shogun had beautiful endings. Although I had my misgivings with the ending on the story as a whole, I feel like the individual character arcs ended absolutely beautifully, and we got so many really phenomenal scenes, and we are going to dive into all of the ones that we did not dive into the other night. So welcome one, welcome all. So glad to have each and every one of you here for the Shogun live finale breakdown. Now, before we say what is up to the chat, Scarlett, Dana, would love to get your takes. Now, just looking at this finale as a whole, I know there's so many scenes that kind of stick out. Is there one scene that sticks out more than the rest, or do you have one scene that is your favorite overall of the rest? Scarlett.
Oh man, that is so hard to answer. Oh, because there's so many good ones. If I had to pick, oh, it's so hard. I want to say the one with Fuji and Blackthorne when, he's getting ready to put the rosary down, and then she's like, let your hand be the last thing that holds her. I don't know, those callbacks in this episode, because there were so many of them, were just the best. But that one, I don't know that because Fuji's such a good character too, and just that whole
Mm,
calmness of that scene, even though it was so sad, her,
yeah.
giving up the ashes, and then him kind of just that everything's coming to a close. We're kind of releasing all that energy, and it's just peace. I don't know. It was just so beautiful.
It was, and like you said, the callbacks were very prevalent in this episode. I thought so many callbacks all the way to the very first episode, even much like with this one, like you see here, like you said, with the whole "Let your hands be the last to hold her," similar to what Mariko said to Fuji in the when their roles were reversed and when she first lost
Yes.
her child and father. Like there was some really great callbacks, and this was a phenomenal scene right here. It was a great kind of ending for Fuji's story.
Oh,
Really
so
awesome
it was
stuff.
so beautiful. I cried a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Those few little tears. They were kind of like these weird happy tears, though, right? Because it was sad,
Mhm.
but it was like, she's releasing it. They're both kind of like, and they even he bows to her, and she just this calmness goes over him. She's at peace
Yeah,
finally with kind of the things that have happened.
she exactly, and that was a great takeaway for Fuji's character is that she does kind of seem like she is finally at peace, and I do think Blackthorne played a big part in her in kind of healing her consciousness and her kind of broken heart in so many ways. Where yeah, she does kind of seem like she is complete. Where a few episodes ago we saw her, seemingly getting ready to take her own life. After her service to Toranaga was officially up, she was going to take her own life and join her husband and son. But we get that great line from Hiromatsu to Fuji telling her, instead of dying, why not live to bask in the glory of the victory that is to come? So it's really good. I feel like between Hiromatsu and Blackthorne and Mariko's sacrifice, I feel like the three of those combined definitely played a big part in Fuji wanting to carry on as opposed to giving up now. So really good ending for her character arc, indeed. What about you, Dana? Is there a specific scene that sticks out among the rest, or a favorite scene, perhaps?
When Blackthorne was sitting and looking out at the garden and it was raining and Fuji kind of walks out and Blackthorne just looks and Mariko's not there and he
Ah,
just says no translator and it's
ah,
just the whole like I literally like when you get that like oh like you're gonna
that
just
like gut
like
punch moment. Yeah,
yeah, and I was just like it but it was like they connected in that moment and I think it was that moment that allowed them to go to the boat and do that together. Like it was like they accepted her being gone in that moment and then they went to celebrate her and
yeah.
like I was just this episode when you want to talk about tugging on my heartstrings, I was just like oh, I can't. And when he was holding her in the beginning, like
Uh,
screaming and yelling, and I was just like, it was an emotional roller coaster.
There was. It was definitely an emotionally charged episode indeed. We saw a lot of very powerful scenes, like scenes that were not very, not high intensity scenes, but powerful scenes nonetheless. Like you kind of said, Scarlett, where even though this was a finale, it kind of had an almost a calming feel throughout the entire episode that never really gets broken. It never really kind of ramps up in intensity. And I like that for a change. And I think Ravener brought touched on a pretty good reason as to what maybe contributed to that on our stream the other night, where the music, I feel like the score in Shogun played a huge part in kind of setting the tone and setting the mood for some of these scenes. Whereas sometimes we'll see, especially in a finale episode, a series finale nonetheless, you will tend to see them go pretty intense with some of the scores, where you'll hear loud, crazy music to try and invoke a certain tone, mood, or feeling during certain scenes. But I love what they did with Shogun on the score, especially in this final episode where this music was incredibly subtle. It never really got too intense. It was always very calming, and it fit the scenes that it was portraying, at any given point. So the score definitely kind of played a big factor for me anyway in kind of having that calming feeling throughout the whole finale. It never really ramped up in intensity. And again,
Hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, because it definitely gave me the vibe of like closure. Like the calmness in the whole episode was just like when you say like a closing episode, other than the fact that yeah, we didn't get the battle, like the main story stuff, but like you said, the character stuff, it really did. It felt like everything was coming to a close, like it was the end of a season, like literally. It was like, I don't know, it was so strange after watching all these different shows that we watch, right? And like you said, most endings are kind of big, very, just bam in your face, some big twist, some big, reveal or big battle or something. And this was just like, no, we're at a close. It didn't end the way we thought it was. It didn't end in a bloody battle. And I wanted that, but honestly, for some strange reason, I'm not sad about it. I don't know why. It's a this episode, I don't know how, it's weird. It made me feel weird after watching it because I don't have that same feeling I normally do with other TV shows.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, it is very kind of strange to see some of the feelings that an episode of Shogun can invoke after it ends, especially after this one being the kind of final episode, knowing that we most likely will probably not be getting any more, at least not with this cast and crew. Maybe we'll get another James Clavell novel down the road. But I 100% agree. I feel like all of the individual character arcs, the individual stories for each individual character, wrapped up as well as you could possibly hope, and even better in some cases. The only incomplete feeling I had was in the overall arching things. And similar to what Doc Hayes says here, it would have been nice to kind of see Ishido get his comeuppance after him being such a formidable villain throughout the entire season, to not actually see him fall and it kind of be alluded to and sort of happening off screen. It's just little things like that I kind of felt a little bit of an incomplete feeling after the episode, but I really did enjoy the individual character arcs. I do feel like they were wrapped up as beautifully as you could have hoped. And just so many good scenes. So many freaking good scenes.
This one, when he friggin' was leaving Osaka and just the wave of emotion that came over him, like, that's what did it for me. Like, it was the emotional moments. Like, even back with Ochiba, like, I feel like it was in that moment that she knew she was going to go onto Toranaga's side. I feel like that was the moment for her when they were talking about how they're not going to like honor Mariko, and like I feel like that was her real turning point.
Oh, yeah, that side eye she gave him, like, look, bro, you didn't go, because I really think that
she was done.
Yeah, because I think Mariko was just supposed to be captured. She wasn't supposed to be killed, and I don't think Ochiba was very happy with that. Like, she was seriously sad. I don't know, maybe because I didn't read the book, so I'm just the way I see it from watching the show. It was like, nah, this went sideways, and then you still disrespecting her. Like, nah, not cool, bro.
Yeah, I think you guys are absolutely spot on when it comes. I feel like that was probably the turning point for her when she kind of fully realized, all right, Ishido, you're not the one. You are not the chosen one. And yeah, she kind of did what she had to do and did what she felt was best in order to give her son, the heir, the best possible chance at a good future. And I think she finally realized that in the end. And Rooftop Korean does bring up a good point. In fairness, season 1 of Game of Thrones was their best season, and we didn't see any battles. And I 100% agree. Season 1 of Game of Thrones will always be my favorite season. It is the best season of Game of Thrones, and it's the best individual season of a TV series that I've ever seen in my life, Game of Thrones season 1. And yes, you don't always need these big full pitch battles to kind of convey, a certain emotion. I was totally fine with them not having a battle in the final episode. My incomplete feeling doesn't come from a lack of a battle happening. It's from the incomplete feeling I feel as a whole. I would have been totally cool with no battle whatsoever, and we at least get a little bit more of a finality to some of the character arcs that we didn't get, like Ishido and some of the like Yabushige got a great ending. He was a great villain throughout the entirety of the series, and he got a really good send off. We'll definitely be diving deep into his scenes, I'm sure. But yes, like Doc and a few of the others were saying, not seeing Ishido get his in the end, not seeing Toranaga become the Shogun. It was just small things like that kind of left a little bit of an incomplete feeling for me. But the lack of having a battle scene in the episode, that didn't bother me at all. I had a feeling we weren't going to be getting any big battles in this final scene. The entire series just hasn't been that kind of series where it doesn't really rely heavily on action and big fight scenes. So I had a feeling they weren't going to all of a sudden just throw that playbook out of the window for the final episode. I had a feeling it wasn't going to be very action heavy. And I'm okay with that. My incomplete feeling just comes from some of the story arc decisions and where they kind of just chose to end the series. But overall, it didn't take away from it. It was still such a phenomenal ride, and I would definitely rate this season of Shogun right up there, almost not quite as good as Game of Thrones season 1, but almost as good as Game of Thrones season 1. That's how good Shogun was for me. Phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a good 9 out of 10. Like you said, it's so hard to compare it to like Game of Thrones though, because it's like
it's a false comparison. Yeah, very much.
Because like I said, if we were getting another season of this of Shogun,
exactly,
maybe my whole, because it would completely change how I view the first season, right? Because then I'm like, okay, well that was a great ender, like you said. I think before we got on, that'd be a great ending spot to start your next season.
Yes.
So it's I don't know.
And that was part of my critique for the ending, where if this would have been an ending to a season 1, one of the best endings to a season I've ever seen in my life. If we were indeed getting a season 2, the way that they ended this first season with just kind of teasing the war, but not really actually getting to the war, it would have been a beautiful way to end a first season. But knowing that this wasn't a season 1 ending, that it was a whole series finale, that was kind of just a little bit of the incomplete feeling that I had. But overall, it was just, you can't take much away from this series. It was just great from start to finish. And we want to know what you guys think in the chat as well. Let me scroll up here and see who we have hanging out with us this evening. And again, welcome one, welcome all. Thank all of you for hanging out with us for these very fun and in-depth Shogun discussions that we have been having. You guys have been so awesome for these streams. I love getting everybody's takes and thoughts in the chat. And as I start to scroll down and say what is up to everybody, definitely let us know in the chat what kind of scenes stuck out to you guys the most. Did you guys have a favorite scene in the finale? We want to know what you guys thought as well. Let's see who we got. We got Jav Styler in the house. What is up, Jav? Good to see you, my friend. We got Michael Lockhart in the building. So many callbacks to previous episodes. Let yours be the final hands that hold her. Why tell a dead man the future? We live and we die. Yeah, really great callbacks in this episode. And so, like you said, some of them going all the way back to episode 1 even. So really enjoyed the callbacks. We got Henry Bemis in the house as well. What is up, Henry Bemis? We got Snuggy Jr. in here. Snuggy doesn't want any spoilers, so he is going to come back and watch this at a later date. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Snuggy and all this catch up on Shogun and see what they think of the ending as well. I know there are a few episodes behind us. We got Kai in the building. What is up, Kai? Good morning to you as well. Good morning and good evening or good afternoon, whatever part of the world you guys are coming to us from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you guys are having a swell day or night. Let's see what else we got. Let's see. I see Rooftop Korean. Definitely different than the book ending, and I'm happy with it, says Rooftop Korean. Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad that, for the most part, it seems like a lot of people were very satisfied with Shogun as a whole, and rightfully so. This was, we don't get high-quality writing and TV like this all the time. This was a special one, for sure. For sure. Mitvinger saying, what is up, Mitvinger? They made Fuji seem pretty. They made Fuji-sama pretty after Mariko left. Well, I thought Fuji-sama was always pretty. I thought she was just drop dead gorgeous throughout the entire series. I feel like she definitely she kind of maybe stood out a little bit more after Mariko was gone. But I thought she was just drop dead gorgeous even from episode 1. The actress playing Fuji is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
She got that confidence as the season went on. That might have made her seem more, because confidence really kind of make you go up a little notch. Make you seem a little prettier. But no, she was definitely really pretty. Like even the first episode, when she's crying and stuff. She's a little cute little chick, little tears in her eyes. So yeah, no, she was always a pretty cute chick.
Yeah, I think so. She got that nice, cute kind of innocence look to her, and but then she does kind of have every once in a while that confidence will come out in her look. And when we talk about a lot of the characters and actors on the cast and how well they are at kind of emoting and how well they are at conveying their expression with just a simple facial expression, I feel like Fuji, the actress who plays Fuji, is among the best in the entire cast at that, where all it takes is a simple little look from Fuji and it conveys so much things. Like again, sometimes a picture could be worth 1,000 words. If that is the case, then a good facial expression is worth 1,000,000, is what I say. And
Oh,
Fujisama
yeah.
was the epitome of that, I thought.
Especially like what was it back in one of the early episodes? I think it was like the second or third one, maybe, or no, it was actually probably past that, where she ends up with the gun. He gives her the guns, and then they try to take her. She just like pulls it on Omi. She just has this look like, no, you can leave.
Yeah.
Or when they're at the tea house and they're negotiating the price and they're like talking, and she gives Mariko that look when the lady calls her out, like, "Oh, will you be joining?" And she's just like, "Oh, I don't know. Will you be joining? I want to know too."
Yeah.
Share for the class.
She's so good. She really has been such a breath of fresh air throughout this entire series, where even in some episodes where, it's a little bit somber, every Fuji scene that comes around kind of just brightens the rest of the episode up. And again, a lot of that is, attributed to the actress who's playing Fuji, her screen presence, the kind of, the vibes that she kind of exudes. She's great in every scene, and the chemistry between her and Blackthorne was just off the charts. I saw so many people were hoping that Blackthorne and Fuji would end up together in the end.
I was one of them. I thought it was gonna happen, man. I didn't know she gonna be a nun. Honestly, that was total shocker. I was like, whoa, you went totally left field from where I thought we was going with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like with the where she like literally tells him like, oh, he's like, but you're my consort or whatever. Like I tell you what to do. She's like, no,
She's like, no, I'm not
I'm
your consort
sorry.
anymore, sucker. I'm
She's
going to be
so
a nun.
calm. Like it's this whole calmness. I'm just like,
She really was great. She's been a shining MVP throughout the entire series. Fuji has, for sure. It's gonna be sad to see her go, the series go at that. Let's see what else we got. We got Doc Hayes in the house. What is up, Doc Hayes? Always good to see you as well, my friend. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me scroll down a little bit more, see if I miss anybody. I see Michael Lockhart in the building. And I know Michael Lockhart was bringing up the fact that he wishes that we could have seen Yabushige's poem from the book that we get towards the end when you get to Yabushige's death scene. Whereas on the show, they completely changed his death poem, where the book version is 10 times better. It's way better. I feel like the show
yeah.
version they went with is not a little juvenile, but it just seemed a little off, especially for the setting of that scene. Here you are, you're Yabushige. You've been dodging death ever since the very first episode, and here it's finally catching up with you. The poem didn't really convey that same emotion. It kind of just felt like it was just weird, the wording of the death poem, and I definitely would have preferred the book version as well, Michael. So that was
Yeah,
a
I
good
want to
call.
try to remember if Michael put it in the chat. 'Cause I
He
remember,
did,
yeah,
yeah.
it was. I remember it being pretty. I'd honestly, dude, write it back down, put it in the chat because I want to write that down, copy and paste it because I remember it being
Yeah,
really
Michael, if
good.
you're still here, if you are still in the chat, my friend, drop the original Yabushige poem, throw it in the chat, and we will bring it up here on screen. Because yeah, I remember reading it, and I remember thinking it's just way more better. It's a lot more fitting for a
Yeah,
Yabushige end, I think.
it was good.
Um, yeah. But again, good stuff. Good stuff all around. Let's see what else we got. I see Buddha Cafe. What is up, Buddha Cafe? I put Shogun right with Spartacus season 2. Spartacus, I had a blast watching Spartacus. I like season 1 the best myself personally, just because I really love the actor Andy Whitfield who played Spartacus in the beginning before he unfortunately came down with pancreatic cancer and passed away. They had to recast Liam McNeary, who was a great Spartacus too. Don't get me wrong; the replacement they got was phenomenal. But Andy Whitfield brought such a really emotional resonance to the role of Spartacus in that first season. Unless you're thinking of season 2 when it wasn't Spartacus focused. The second season, I believe, was a prequel when we kind of saw the origins and the beginning of Crixus and Gannicus and all of them. That was a freaking great season too. Man, I love Spartacus. I'm gonna have to revisit that one. It's been forever since I've seen Spartacus. Thank you for reminding me, Buddha Cafe. I'm gonna watch some Spartacus, I think, later on. Good stuff. Good stuff. Season 2, where would they find story? Well, unfortunately, they did cover all of the James Clavell novel in season 1, but the real history that all of these characters are based on, they have barely scratched the surface of all of the real history of Tokugawa and the beginning of his shogunate and him becoming shogun and everything. So technically, if they really wanted to, there is so much source material that they could draw on just from real world history that they could definitely do a season 2 if they wanted to. But unfortunately, this being based on the James Clavell novel, we have unfortunately reached the end of that source material. But the real history behind these characters, there's still so much more that they go on to do. So much more. We've barely scratched the surface in Shogun season 1. Let's see what else we got. I feel like a binge or rewatch of the entire season will make the ending a lot more satisfying. And honestly, that does tend to happen from time to time, especially on a series like this where it is released weekly and you're waiting week after week to watch the new episode, which I love personally. I really appreciate the weekly release. I'm not a huge fan of the binge model unless it's a rewatch. When you are going back to rewatch seasons, yeah, it's nice to kind of binge them then because you've already seen it at that point. You can kind of pay attention to the story a little bit more as a whole, and you know what's coming. So you might catch some things that you might have missed the first time around. So, yeah, I think a rewatch of Shogun would be awesome. Absolutely.
That's how I am. I like doing the binge after the original season airs. Like
Yeah.
I like the week to week anticipation. Like, okay, when is it's coming back next Friday? It's only Tuesday. Damn it! Like I love that feeling. We haven't gotten that in a while.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, R.I.P. Andy Whitfield. Yeah, he was good. He was a great Spartacus. And yeah, Fuji Bay, best nun. That was another good scene as well, where Fuji is informing Blackthorne that she's no longer his consort. She is going to be a nun. And that was a very kind of sweet scene because you see how desperate Blackthorne is for Fuji to stay in that moment. He's got no one else at that point. Mariko's gone. He doesn't have the best relationship with Toranaga. They're not the closest of friends as they are in some other iterations. So really, Fuji was the one person that he kind of had at that point left. So you could totally see why Blackthorne was really wanting Fuji to stay then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Fuji-sama, best nun ever. I also wanted the Ochiba birthday scene from the 80s version as well, but hey, they did a great job with the writing. Indeed, they really did. I can take nothing away from the quality of the writing and the dialogue, the storytelling as a whole. It's been just phenomenal. It really has. Again, a show like this, a good quality show like this, where every aspect of the production from top to bottom is just meticulously paid attention to. You don't get good storytelling like this in every series these days, unfortunately. So I very much enjoyed it, and I commend the cast and crew for the product they managed to create here. Good stuff.
I still am shocked. Like I still can't believe that this wasn't filmed in actually in Japan.
I know, right? Yeah. The way that they managed to kind of convey that legitimately really kind of looked like a feudal era style version of Japan, to be able to create that right from freaking Canada of all places, is pretty impressive. It's very impressive.
I was shocked when you said that.
Well, that's another trend that we're seeing become vastly more popular, where so many shows are starting to shoot in Vancouver, in Canada these days. It's becoming Hollywood 2.0 at this point, where so many productions are moving their production from Hollywood to Vancouver. A lot of our favorite shows that we watch are filmed in Vancouver as well. Not only Shogun, but From as well is notoriously filmed predominantly. All of it is filmed in Canada.
Yellow Jackets too.
Yeah, that's right. Yellow Jackets. That's another one.
Is it because of cost, I'm assuming?
I think cost effective is a part of it, and the filming labor laws, I imagine, differ in some ways. So I imagine there's probably some things that they can get away with in Canada that they might not be able to get away with in Hollywood, and vice versa. But yeah, little things like that. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of productions film in Canada these days. A lot. So yeah, I mean, if it helps put together a better story, I am all for it. We got Khaleesi Mandy in the house. What is up, Khaleesi Mandy? I absolutely loved the whole series. Would love a season 2, but I'll take what we got. Crimson Sky was beautifully done. It really was. And again, the Crimson Sky thing was a huge kind of point of contention in terms of what exactly was Crimson Sky going to be. We hear it first introduced to us in the beginning as this kind of full frontal assault on Osaka capital. But at the end of the day, the real Crimson Sky that we actually got was just 10 times better. And I love the line we get from Toranaga in this episode when he and Yabushige are having their final moments on the cliff, where he says, "I sent one woman where an army couldn't go." And it was just such a freaking good line, because it's so true. Mariko, one freaking woman, accomplish what an entire army couldn't, in terms of what Mariko did enacting the Crimson Sky plan and really just turning the entirety of Osaka up on its freaking head with what she did. I love how the second she stepped into that city, she instantly put Ishido in a terrible position in terms of, do I kill Mariko and risk an entire revolt with the whole city rising up, or do I let Mariko go and risk losing the rest of the hostages? So yeah, Mariko's effectiveness at enacting that version of Crimson Sky, absolutely beautifully done. I agree.
Oh yeah, the ripple effect of what she did was so beautifully done. God, Toranaga, I ain't gonna lie, like, I know everybody, he's a villain, I guess, in the end, but
oh my God,
so smart. Like, because to be honest with you, the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, okay, yeah, he's gonna end up going for blood. He's gonna go for blood at some point. But the whole way through, honestly, he didn't go for blood, like, battle wise. He was he was getting everybody. He really did what he said about the Falcon. He did. He did. He told us the whole time. I wasn't listening.
Yeah, he told us his strategy in the very like first or second episode. We get that great line of, like you said, Scarlett, Toranaga comparing people to falcons, and not only people, but almost himself in a way, where he talks about the quality of falcons, how they kind of wait and they conserve their energy and they wait for the right time to strike, which totally ended up being pretty much a whole allegory for Toranaga's arc as a whole. So yeah, it's very, very Falcon-like in Toranaga's way he approached things.
You got to give it to him. He was planning this. They're saying from back when Mariko's father killed the original Taiko. You want to talk about someone who has been able to just move those chess pieces, be patient, and it may have cost him some of the people closest to him, but he saved hundreds of, like, in this world, if I didn't know that there was the real history, that there was in fact a battle of some kind, I would have really have thought, yeah, is he a villain? But he still saved so many lives if this avoided a conflict.
Exactly. And again, you talk a little bit about the ends justifying the means at the end of the day. And yes, Toranaga did employ some kind of backhanded tactics in the end to achieve his goal. And that can be construed as him, being some sort of a villain. And that's been pretty interesting to see the fans' response to that, where it seems, at least judging by my comment section, it seems people are kind of split down the middle on that, where some people think Toranaga is kind of a villain, and some people think that he was just doing what was necessary to create a better future. So it's really interesting to see what side of the coin you guys land on. And actually, I guess that could be one of our first questions for the chat this evening. After seeing everything that we have seen from episode 1 all the way to episode 10, what do you guys think in the chat? Do you think Toranaga could technically be considered a villain now, or do you think he was just doing what was necessary to create a better future? I would love to know what you guys think. And you guys as well. Scarlett, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see him as a villain because, compared to the other regents, the other leaders, and people even before him that they kind of showed, I hate to say it, he's playing the game, and he's just playing it very well. And even like Dana was saying, there was a lot of lives on the line. Even, he could have done the big Crimson Sky before. He could have, just kind of went after his, what was his, Saki, I know I was saying his name wrong. It's like half brother or whatever. They could have went and did that kind of battle, but he knew that he was trying to save his group of people, right? Like, he's like, if we do this, more people are going to die. And he even said in the episode after his son died, I'm not going to take these deaths in vain. They do have purpose. They do have meaning. And throughout the whole, series, it kind of reflected that whole life and death and what meaning it has, and that there's a greater sense of purpose. And we're all, we all have this sort of part to play in life in order for, the grander thing to happen. So I don't see him as a villain. I mean, he's honestly just a really smart guy who played the game in the time that he played it, and he essentially won.
Awesome. I like it. What about you, Dana? You think Toranaga lands on the side of villainy, or do you think he is just doing what needs to be done?
I think he's a villain, but he's such a good villain that he made me like him. That's what makes him good, is that he had me rooting for him the whole way, and he was basically a master manipulator of this whole thing. And it's just funny, after seeing that little side smile that he gave Yabushige before he lopped off his head, in this moment, he calculated for all of this. And in a crazy way, he reminded me of Leland from Evil, because he just had his hands in everything. Like, you didn't realize how much he had his hand in. Talk about it. Like, Ishido, you knew what he wanted. He wanted his power. Yabushige just wanted to stay alive. Like, he wanted to, yes, unite Japan and keep Japan safe, but he wanted to put his own butt on that seat.
Yeah. And that's a very good point that you...
I love him. He's a villain, but I still rooted for him.
And that's kind of how I felt for Yabushige up until Yabushige caused the death of Mariko. I kind of felt the same way towards Yabushige as well. Like, even though this guy is a villain, I can't help but kind of respect his determination to kind of just stay alive at all costs. And maybe again, part of it might have just been Tatenobu's Asano's performance as Yabushige was just so freaking good that maybe I favored his character a little bit more. Because I really enjoy good acting performances, whether it's in a villain role, a hero role. I really appreciate good acting. And Tatenobu Asano was just so freaking good in that role that I found myself kind of rooting for Yabushige here and there until he caused the death of Mariko. At that point, I feel like his redemption arc was not a possibility.
Yeah, Yabu was Yabu. He was the villain for me. I loved him, but he was the villain for me next to Ishido. Those two, I wanted to see their heads cut off the most.
Yeah. And again, like Doc Hayes was bringing up in the chat earlier, which is one thing that I really wish we could have seen on the show as well, is actually seeing Ishido get his comeuppance. That would have been a really nice scene to see. But I understand the kind of feel that they were going for and why they didn't include a battle and all of that. Totally understand. And of course, there is no big battle in the book either, so they are following the source material. Let's see what the chat is saying as well. Crazy Sinister says, yes, he is a villain. Baron Nishi says, when your Ned Stark turns out to be Tywin Lannister. Good one. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
That's perfect.
It is. That's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Yeah. It's even more jarring in the book because he is so friendly with Blackthorne. And that was one thing that I think a lot of the people who read the books, myself included, because I got deeper and deeper into the book as the series progressed myself. And I was really hoping that we were going to see that friendship develop between Blackthorne and Toranaga. And we just never really got that deep bond and that deep sense of friendship until like this final episode when we get to Blackthorne's seppuku scene, which we will dive into in a little bit. But yes, you didn't really get they didn't play up the friendship angle between Blackthorne and Toranaga too much in this version, which is something I wish they would have done a little bit better of.
They even kind of that's why I guess I don't see him as a villain, because like even when he revealed Blackthorne basically just kind of used him as a distraction, well, he kind of played that hand. I mean, I got that vibe from the very beginning when he kept Blackthorne. Like the whole reason he kept him was to divide division, be a distraction. So even Mariko, he it's so sad, but that's what she wanted, right? That was the honorable death that she had been asking for. That was kind of, she had made peace, like she had made all these plans prior. It was so thought out that it was like, it didn't come off villainous to me. I don't know. Maybe I just like him too much.
No, but that's the thing. Like, he's so, like, you love him. Like, I still rooted for him. Even knowing what he did at the end, I was still on his side the entire time. To where, yes, he'd be categorized as a villain, but he was just like, go Toranaga. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, the skill and the wit that he kind of implemented, and really playing the incredibly long game. You want to talk about playing the long game? Toranaga is the master of playing the long game and really waiting for things to play out. And again, always having a plan for every situation that arises. And sometimes that does involve maybe getting your hands dirty to a certain extent. So I can definitely see both sides of the argument. I can totally understand people seeing Toranaga as a little bit of a villain, and I could totally understand people seeing that he's kind of just doing what is necessary. Rooftop Korean says, I figured he wanted the Shogun position when he kept denying it. History is written by the victor, and a reluctant hero is more reliable and relatable and revered. Absolutely. Again, yeah, we see very, very early on, I believe in episode 2, when the Taiko's former wife is talking to Toranaga and saying that now is not the time for peace. Now is the time for a shogun. And even back then, Toranaga is kind of always denying that, where he feels like it was a title from a bygone era or something that he didn't want. But anytime someone's saying they don't want something, you got to be careful, because there's always a little degree of someone really wanting it in the end. And I do think part of Toranaga definitely did want to be Shogun. Michael Lockhart says he was playing 4D chess. Everyone else was playing in the dirt. Indeed, everyone's playing checkers, and he is playing some full-blown chess like a master.
It was great.
It really was good. He's historically similar to someone like Augustus. His legacy is very positive, but he was a ruthless person. That's an interesting way to look at it. That's a very interesting way. Not a villain, just a stone-cold gangsta, says Brian. Toranaga sacrificed the few for the good of the many, says Henry Bemis. Awesome. Khaleesi says, I do not see him as a villain, but one of the greatest strategists of all time. And that is, I think that's undeniable. Absolutely. 100% agree. Whether or not you see Toranaga as a villain or the hero, I think one thing we all can agree on is he is a master strategist, and he's a master at using the arms at your disposal to the optimal effectiveness. So yeah, you can't take the skill away from him, whether you think he's a villain or not. His strategy game is next level. Buddha Cafe thinks he's creating a better future because it's the Japanese way. Seeing Ito become Tokyo, he had a very long vision indeed, and we do get that one kind of quick scene in the beginning of the series, in the beginning of the episode, where we do see what Ito has really kind of turned into. And we know, of course, current day Ito is now Tokyo. But back then, Toranaga clearly had a pretty big vision for what he wanted his city to eventually become. And here we get this scene of the old man Blackthorne scenes as we got. And here we see just what Ito does end up turning into, whereas during our current story, all of these plots were completely empty. These were the plots that where the church was, and where Madame Gin was looking at the plot where she was going to build her geisha girl house. That's what these plots. And now we see it years and decades later when Old Man Blackthorne is a grandfather, and we've seen just what Ito has become as a city. Just absolutely massive. And these scenes were actually described a little bit in the podcast for this episode, where everything that we were seeing here, I always thought that this was Blackthorne as an old man looking back on his life. But that really wasn't the case. Apparently, the way that they described the Old Man Blackthorne scenes were, this was a version of the future, a future that could happen. So anytime we see the scenes of Old Man Blackthorne, that's actually what young, current Blackthorne is thinking could happen one day, not necessarily what did happen.
So
I thought that was
that's
an
why it's
interesting
called a dream of a
explanation.
dream.
exactly why it's
Got
called
it.
a dream of a dream. Exactly.
See, I
Yep.
wondered if it was the dream was Toranaga envisioning
Me
and
too.
then
Me
just
too.
Blackthorne, remembering. Like, I didn't think it was all because Blackthorne. Oh, I got it.
It
Sorry,
makes
it
you.
just all clicked.
It makes you look at the entire episode from a little bit of a different lens. Like when I heard that in the podcast, I kind of took a step back and I thought, okay, it kind of makes you look at things from a little bit of a different perspective where I'm thinking this whole final episode is being told from years in the future from Blackthorne, maybe looking back on his life and maybe with regret at regret at how things happened, what he could have done differently. But then when they drop that kind of bomb during the podcast saying that, no, this wasn't Blackthorne looking back on his life, the old man Blackthorne scenes were actually current day Blackthorne looking at what the future could be. I thought that was just a beautiful way of conveying that and something you don't normally see. It's usually vice versa in these cases, but I thought that was a really good way of explaining the old man Blackthorne scenes, if nothing else. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, because I
Yabushige
think
is still scheming, asking if Anjin could second him, knowing he is bad with a sword. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty good. And that would have been pretty interesting to see if Blackthorne could have seconded good old Yabushige in that scene. I almost feel like it would have been
yeah,
almost even more fitting,
I
especially
know.
considering where Blackthorne and Yabushige's story began all those episodes ago in the
Mm-hmm.
very first episode on the first cliff that we find Blackthorne and Yabushige. For Yabushige's story to end on a cliff just like that, and had it been Blackthorne up there, it would have just had that really nice symbolic kind of feeling of, coming full circle almost. But I do
Yeah.
get them wanting to have that final scene between Toranaga and Yabushige. I feel like that scene was a little bit more important narratively as a whole, especially for Toranaga to finally have a chance to voice his plan out in the world, knowing that it's going to be taken to his grave. He doesn't have to worry about anybody hearing him. He doesn't have to worry about Yabushige, telling anybody else what he heard because he knows he's about to die. So in that one moment, we get to see Toranaga in some small way kind of let his guard down and just speak the truth to a certain extent anyway. He kind of
Yeah.
keeps something close to the chest.
I
But
like
that's
just like the scene you have up here. Like that to me was just always the callback to the beginning when Blackthorne's there, and he's having to sit before and stuff.
yes.
This episode, I'm sorry, the callbacks just got me going.
No, the callbacks were really good, and that, like you said, it's a very good one because we saw Blackthorne in this exact same position in the very first episode when he first washes up on Japan. It's Blackthorne being taken in front of Yabushige, and here we are, role reversal, everything coming full circle 10 episodes later. So the callbacks were great; they really were good. Let's see what else you guys are saying in the chat. The real Blackthorne, William Adams, has a pretty exciting life following Toranaga winning. He gains a large fief, marries, and leads trade fleets to Siam and Cochin, Thailand and Vietnam. Yeah, again, that's why the real history behind these characters, like I love Shogun. This has been such a phenomenal story, but the real characters behind these characters are almost even more fascinating in some ways. Like you said, the real William Adams, the real Tokugawa, all of the real characters behind all of these characters. The real history is incredibly fascinating. Although the Shogun novel ends here, the real history goes on for many, many, many more years. So there is a lot more stuff that all of these characters do go on to accomplish after Toranaga becomes Shogun. So that's a good point. Very good point. What is up, Sweet Pea? What is up, Q? Good to see everybody. Hill all. I don't know how I feel about the finale. It left much to be desired, and that is totally cool. We want to get everybody's opinions on it. We want to know what you guys thought, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you loved it, let us know. If you hated it, let us know. This is definitely the place to share your opinion, and all opinions are welcome. Sweet Pea says he did lie to Yabu about Blackthorne. His words gave him hope, so he was important. He didn't want to admit it, and that's a good point as well. Whereas even at the very end, Toranaga isn't always going to show all of his cards, as it were. He's always kind of playing things a little close to the chest, and he's never ever telling the full truth. It seems. So that's a good point. Many times the difference between a villain and the hero is who wins. Toranaga won. And this is a very, very good point, Jeremiah, as well. Whereas, yeah, like you said, oftentimes history is written by the victor. and it's usually kind of history's point of view is usually kind of skewered in favor of that figure 9 times out of 10. So yeah, Toranaga won at the end of the day. He gets to set the stage now. It's a good point. Good point. I learned about Anjin and history in Japan, and that's awesome. I imagine, I always wondered that, like, how these figures are portrayed in their actual home country. Like, how exactly is William Adams thought of in Japan? Is he liked? Is he revered? Is he disliked? That's always been very interesting to me as well, because it's one thing for us to kind of get a view of these characters from an outside perspective. But if you are Japanese and this is your real world history, it's always interesting to see how your perspective on these characters are and how it might differ from outsiders like us kind of looking in. But one thing I really do appreciate with the show, and again, we talked about it the other night, but Hideyoki Sanada said in multiple interviews that one of his goals with doing the show was sharing an actual authentic look of Japanese culture and sharing it with the rest of the world. And if nothing else, they completely knocked it out of the park when doing that. Like, they really shared just a beautiful point in time in Japanese history with the rest of the world. And I feel like it gave a lot of us a newfound appreciation for this time period and for the history that maybe we didn't have prior to Shogun. So I'm very thankful for the show for that.
Yeah, and it's such a different take from the 80s version because I was watching some, like, once this was over, like, I really like dove into like the 80s episode, and I forget who was in the interview, but somebody, one of the showrunners was basically saying the 80s version focused so much on it appealing to a Western audience at the time. That's why they
Yes.
didn't even put up subtitles for the Japanese speaking, because they wanted you to see it from Blackthorne's perspective of not knowing the language. And that's why it was a little more animated in how they were trying to communicate with one another, to where this
Mhm.
version, they wanted to keep it more traditional and show you the real side of what this was compared to what a Westerner's view would be from the 80s.
Mm. And that's actually a very good point, and it makes sense because, like you said, so often, especially in Western style media, anytime we get a look at samurais or any kind of period correct drama that is set in a similar time period in feudal Japan, you do always kind of tend to get that westernized version of it that is kind of catered a little bit more towards Western audience. So I love that they did not do that with Shogun, and they went as authentic as they possibly could, going so far as to hire real no expert actors from Japan, flying them all the way over into Vancouver to do a very specific and custom no play for the episode that we got the no play in it. So it's just the little things like that, the extra mile that the production went in so many different areas to really kind of convey a real authentic version. I really commend them for that, because so many times stories like this can tend to fall into those Western style tropes that can be kind of cheap and kind of clichéic. And Shogun, for the most part, avoided all of those traps. So I really appreciate that, give them kind of approaching this thing from a more Japanese standpoint, a more authentic standpoint. I think it made for a much better series overall. Let's see. Kai says Fuji protested the idea of serving Anjin at the start, asked to be a nun, and only agreed to 6 months of service. So in the end, she fulfilled her obligations and was allowed to be a nun. And yeah, that was great. Like, again, she, we see Fuji at the very beginning of the season. She wants nothing to do with Blackthorne. Certainly doesn't want to be his consort. And slowly but surely, you start to see the relationship that is developed between Blackthorne and Fuji, where I feel like they kind of healed each other in some ways and kind of, were, a good inspiration to each other in terms of not giving up. And then you see where they ended with Blackthorne kind of begging for her to stay. It's funny to see where it ended up, considering where it started. So good point,
I
Cal.
so thought they were going to be a little more, especially the way he ran to like check on her after the earthquake.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
had, well, I was like, oh no. But she did. She still got, honestly, it was probably because didn't I'm assuming Blackthorne never left, but didn't he have like a family? Wasn't he already like
Blackthorne.
married?
Yes, Blackthorne. He does say in episode 3 that he has a wife and children that he left because the sea was beckoning him.
Yeah. So yeah, to be fair, he probably wasn't really. I wanted him to be with Fuji, but really they were never meant to be.
He did
Yeah.
end up with the real version of him, I believe, did marry somebody in Japan and had children
Yes.
with
Okay.
He did.
someone. So I believe he did eventually settle down and make a family in Japan, and
He does.
because he knew he was never going to leave at that point, from what I've seen videos on of some real history. So he knew that even in his freedom, he wasn't really free.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
this ends up becoming his place, and like you said, yeah, he does after the Battle of Sekigahara, and the real Tokugawa does become shogun and all of that. Yes, the real William Adams, he does end up settling down, and even I believe someone in the chat even mentioned it as well. He ends up becoming one of the kind of shipwrights to the Tokugawa Empire and is responsible for trade and things like that. So he holds a very high and honored position in Tokugawa's kind of regime for years to come. So yeah, this ends up becoming his home. He never ends up going back to England, I believe. Good stuff. I laughed out loud at Yabu asking other ways to die. That was freaking hilarious as well. And again, we've kind of seen all season the just weird fascination that Yabushige has with death. He's always ranking certain deaths and which death is better than other deaths. And as soon as he is ordered to commit seppuku, he instantly kind of freaks out a little bit. He totally freaks out, actually, where he's like, please, please give me any other death. Give me a better death. Let me be torn apart by cannons, or let me be eaten alive by a school of angry fish. It's like, man, damn, like, what does your psyche look like, Yabushige? Damn. Fucked. So yeah, his fascination with death was a again, Yabushige provided some of the best moments of levity and comedic levity throughout the season, which I really appreciated, because a show like this without any comedic levity, it can be a little too serious in tone all the way throughout. You need those little breaks in that serious tone where the audience can have a good laugh every once in a while. And Yabushige's character, I feel, was so good for those kind of comedic moments. And that was one of them, definitely. And Toranaga was like, all great suggestions, but no,
I don't trust you.
I don't trust you. Yeah. He had Mariko's rosary in the dream, but he dropped it in the water to change his fate. Good point, Rooftop Korean. Exactly. When we see Old Man Blackthorne, he's holding on to Mariko's rosary, her cross. But as we see at the end of the episode, that's at the bottom of the lake. So that right there is just another kind of some more evidence pointing to that this isn't Blackthorne looking back on his life. This is Blackthorne, current day Blackthorne, looking at a possible future.
That
And
makes
like you
more
said,
sense now, because I wondered about that. I was like, well, how did he get the cross back? I know it went in the water. Like, did somebody fish it out later? Like, did he find it? He's just like, I don't know, fishing, and they
yeah.
just kind of
Changed
bought
his
out of it.
mind, went back and got it.
He dove down and swam down and got it when he was tying those ropes to the Erasmus when they were pulling it out of the sea there. He dove down there. And as Ray Barnes says, I demand the scene at the end where Toranaga barely nods. He does. And unfortunately, we did not get Toranaga titties, but we did get Yabushige titties. And I thought about you, Ray Barnes, when I thought of loading up my stills for tonight's stream. I figured I got to get me a still of them Yabushige titties for my boy Ray Barnes. So yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get Toranaga titties, but we got Yabushige titties.
Oh,
And
it's
this
so
was a
good,
crazy
dude.
scene in and of itself. Like
Losing
how
his
did
mind.
he was losing it? Like again, we can talk a little bit about that. Let's dive into Yabushige as a character for a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, of course, he's just losing it. And again, it was really interesting and almost kind of sad in some ways to see Yabushige reduced to this state after everything he had kind of been through in order to survive up until this point, where you see he's just mentally and physically broken in this moment. And whether it's the effects of Mariko's death kind of weighing on his conscience, or maybe even the effects of the blast that just rung his freaking bell, or a combination of the two, he's not himself at the very least. And I mean, we see him chasing phantom catfish in a freaking 2-inch pond. It was just hilarious to see him go from this kind of almost kind of suave guy where he kind of always had not on the level of Toranaga, of course, but Yabushige always kind of finds a way to kind of get out of trouble in the last possible moment. And to see him go from that reduced to kind of this bumbling half mad fool, it was just crazy to see. And again, it was almost sad at times to see him reduced to this, but it was portrayed great. These scenes were acted phenomenally. I imagine the actor probably had a ton of fun with these scenes, like just kind of letting loose and going crazy with the character in the end. But yeah, it was really weird to see him
I know.
acting like this.
Ishido's like,
What did you guys
there's
make
no
of him?
catfish in there. He's like,
I know.
I know, I know, I know.
I know that. I know that. Yeah, what'd you make of Yabushige as a whole, and how did you like his story arc and where it ended, where it started and where it ended?
Oh man, it was beautiful. Honestly, it was so good. Just it was comedic and
Yeah.
just like he was a strange character, right? Because I mean, the way he thought about death and everything was so crazy, and then to see him at the end here, he was kind of crazy here, but then it gets to a point later where he's kind of accepting, right? And so it
Yeah.
was a really good just roller coaster with him. But even like in this scene was so much because I think at one point when he was talking to him, he was even talking about the earthquake. He's like,
Yeah.
you never know. It's almost like he knows, man. He's always trying to let Ishido know, like, dude, you ain't got this. And we're just, I don't know, it was so crazy. It was a good scene though.
It was a really good scene, and yes, Michael Lockhart, you are 100% right. And actually, I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you did. There is actually a Japanese legend of a giant catfish that causes earthquakes by waving its tail, and that's exactly where this scene comes from. Where he even
He
talks
says it
about
too, right?
he says it too, where the former Taiko actually blamed an earthquake on the catfish as well years ago. So yeah, that is a very not common, but that is very much known in Japan to be a kind of a little legend, a little proverb there, that there's a giant catfish causing earthquakes all over the place with its tail. So it was nice to see them kind of sprinkle that into the show. But yeah, Yabushige as a whole, it was in terms of satisfying character arcs, I feel like he had one of the most satisfying, just in terms of from an audience standpoint, watching his character develop from where he started to where he ended. As much as I really would have loved to see a redemption arc for Yabushige, that just was not in the cards for his character. That just isn't who he was, apparently. And I'm okay with that. Again, I feel like he had a pretty good ending. Again, starting here where he's more than half freaking mad. And then to the point where we get to on the boat where he's even madder. He's like, take me to your home country. We can sail on your ship. Teach me how to dive like you did Toranaga. Like he's just freaking losing it. Absolutely
He's
losing
kind
it.
of wishing he had taken Blackthorne's offer a little earlier.
Yeah. And I
Come
love
back
how
and the ship's gone. It's just like, oh my god. Both of
and I
them,
love how
like,
Blackthorne reacts to it. He's like,
yes.
get a hold of yourself, man.
Yeah. Just like they really this last episode, Blackthorne. I mean, not to change it from Yabu, but he's totally different too. They're just
Yes.
everybody has like their whole characters is just everybody's changed, and it's like noticeable.
Very much so. Yeah, you definitely see. I feel like Blackthorne matured the most in this episode compared to previous episodes. I feel like the death of Mariko definitely matured Blackthorne, for lack of a better sense. Like Mariko's death is going to have a profound effect on Blackthorne going forward. Some negative and some positive. I feel like her death and him realizing Mariko's sacrifice definitely helped him kind of mature as a character a little bit in this final episode. So that's a good point. That is a good point. Sweet Pea says you have to give it to him. No hesitation with stabbing himself in the gut. Absolutely, and let's take a look at his beautiful, incredible Seppuku scene ending. This scene was just incredible from start to finish. Seeing Yabushige out there on that cliff where he first started, and even before that, seeing the scene between Yabushige and Omi was very good as well. Talking how Omi was, I consider you the son that I never had. This was a really great moment in between these two characters who have had kind of a complicated relationship from the beginning, where Omi was very much afraid of his uncle to start, didn't want to upset him, didn't want to get on his bad side, was kind of afraid of him, it seemed. Whereas as the season progressed, it seems like they did develop a little bit more of a familial bond between uncle and nephew. to the point now where Yabushige is considering him the son that he never had and named him his heir and to inherit all of his holdings. So this was a really great scene between Omi and Yabushige. And the only gripe, not gripe, but the only thing I wish would have been a little bit different is, as Michael Lockhart and some of you in the chat brought up earlier, how we wish that it would have been the poem, the book version of Yabushige's poem, as opposed to this show version. That's a little bit different. But that's just a small nitpick. And then, of course, no Yabushige character arc would be complete if we did not see his final will and testament.
It's a I know.
It's the final of the final.
I wasn't even sure until you get the actual final blow. I wasn't sure. I'm like, he's gonna somehow save himself.
Is it the final one? Is he really gonna die?
You're gonna go back to his place and find 10 other copies.
Was gonna tell you something to be like, my friend, you're not really dead. We're gonna say you're dead, and you're now gonna be my super secret spot.
Yeah, he survived. He found his head and put it back on his body and walked away. You can't kill Yabushige. He just keeps going on. But no, that was a great touch. I mean, obviously that has been another great source of kind of comedic levity throughout the entire season, where we always see Yabushige writing and rewriting his will, never knowing when death is going to come. So yeah, his story arc wouldn't have been complete if we didn't see him write out his final will and testament there. But yeah, let's take a look at this scene real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it, because there's some really interesting subtleties that happen here in this scene in particular that I definitely want to dive into a little bit.
稼ぎの名は決して絶やさぬとお誓い申し上げまする。
そう思わなんだら申し出ておらぬわ。わしは息子に恵まれなんだが、お主のことを息子のように思っておった。わしの遺書じゃ。一体どのような心地がするものでございましょうか。殿は全ての風を己の欲しいままに操っておられる。読むだけじゃ。まずはわしの新たな権勢の要である江戸から始める。築き上げるは戦のない太平の世じゃ。絵空事にございまするな。我らの一生も下々の者たちの死も生贄も皆我ら一門の名に勝利を記すだけのもの。全て思いのままになる。将軍の小さいも胸の奥に秘めたお心は殿も他の者とさほど変わりませんな。本当のことを語ってくだされ。墓場まで持ってまいりまするゆえ。死人に先々の話をして何とする。
Oh man.
Whew, man,
So much.
what a powerful freaking scene.
So many
and
good
this is so-
quotes, dude.
uh,
So many good
The quotes are freaking great. And then when you actually look at the kind of deeper meaning behind some of the quotes and some of the callbacks to earlier episodes, this was definitely my favorite scene of the entire finale, the Yabushige and Toranaga scene. Hands down, definitely my standout of the entire episode. Let's see what you guys are saying here in the chat. Henry Vima says Yabushige was one of the top 3 performances. That's saying something with a show with at least a dozen amazing performances. Absolutely. Again, and I 100% agree, where I feel like Yabushige's performance, the performance of Tatenobu Asano as Yabushige, he was probably, just from a pure acting standpoint, between him and Toranaga, those were probably my 2 favorite just flat out performances in the entire series. Both of these actors brought so much to their respective roles and brought these characters to life in ways that I didn't think possible. Like when I think of Yabushige, I will always think of Tatenobu Asano now going forward. And same thing with Hideyoki Sanada as Toranaga. They just perfectly embody these two roles. Very good point. Yabu's redemption is his corpse feeding the wild dogs. That is true. That is true. Sweepy says, I'm not sure Omi was a spy, but I didn't read the book. Perhaps he started being more prudent after his own machinations killed his friend. Interesting. Very interesting. If Toranaga didn't need to tell his vision to someone on screen, he'd have just had that as an internal monologue, like in the book. His end would have been much different and maybe more badass. Which is that could have been interesting to see as well. I kind of really like this final meeting between Toranaga and Yabushige because I feel like it does give Toranaga that one chance to actually voice things that he would never voice out loud in any other circumstance, where, like you said, in any other circumstance, this would be kind of an internal monologue from Toranaga, where here he actually has the freedom and the safety to say it, knowing that it's not going to go anywhere. So I kind of enjoyed the final meeting between the two. Thought it was good. And yes, as Leo V points out, Yabu said, dead man future quote to Omi in episode 1. Toranaga repeated the same quote. Again, yes, we hear that. What is the point of telling the future to a dead man, which Toranaga repeats to Yabushige in this episode. Again, just another great callback that we got among all of the other phenomenal callbacks. Good stuff.
Yes.
Very good stuff.
Yeah. What was the wind where he said, how does it feel to shape the wind? And he says, I study it. I was like, oh, I don't know. It was so good.
Yeah. And it really was, yeah, because you hear Yabushige, he's like, how does it feel? How does it feel to be able to, manipulate the very freaking wind to your wheel? Or it kind of seems like that, at least from an outside perspective, looking at everything that Toranaga accomplished and how he accomplished it. Yeah, you could totally understand Yabushige like asking him, like, how the hell do you get to control the wind? And I love the response from Toranaga where he's, I don't control it. I study it, which was just
because he studied
dialogue.
Everybody. Like it was everything he did. He was just like, I basically let y'all do you. I just kind of shifted, or like it was so good. Oh, I loved it.
It was good, yeah. And yeah, that was kind of funny as well. I definitely agree, Arrow Chick, as well, with that one line of Yabushige's servant saying, have a good death. I kind of chuckled a little bit at that myself. That was kind of funny. You have to feel bad for Ami having to rat out his uncle. He wasn't happy about it. Honor mandated it. Absolutely. And again, we definitely saw Omi kind of mature a lot in many ways throughout the series as well, where at the beginning he was very kind of childish and impetuous, whispering into the ear of Toranaga's son, getting him to do all kind of crazy shit. And now you look at the Omi that the season finale produced, much more of a mature Omi. I feel like he definitely learned a lot along the ways. And one thing he certainly learned was, like you said, loyalty and honor, how honor kind of demanded that he essentially rat out his uncle to Toranaga. And I feel like the death of Mariko, this is just another example of Mariko's death having a profound impact on so many of our characters, not just Blackthorne and Toranaga and Fuji, but even a character like Omi was seemingly kind of impacted from Mariko's death. It seems like Mariko's death really opened a lot of people's eyes in terms of who the good side was, or at least seemingly the good side was. And yeah, Omi in that moment steps up, and as much as he probably didn't want to, he hands that letter over to Toranaga, informing him that Yabushige did indeed have a hand in opening the gates and letting these shinobi assassins in. So, very good point, Henry. Very good point indeed.
And you got to give it to Yabushige, though, because as soon as he was asked, he didn't deny it. He owned it. He was like, you know what? Yeah, I did have a hand in it. Like, at least he didn't cower in, like, trying to, but let me try to. No, he knew that was his final moment.
Yep.
Yeah, indeed. He was caught.
Yeah. he knew that he was getting to the end of his rope, I feel. And I definitely feel like the crazy version of Yabushige was still kind of maybe scrambling to potentially get out of it, even going so far as to ask Blackthorne to take him on his boat to England. But once Yabushige got in front of Toranaga and he was brought before him, I feel like from that point on, Yabushige had to know that his fate was sealed. I feel like he kind of knew he was getting to the end of his rope now. Good point. Let's see what else we got here in the chat. And yes, Death from the Sky, you never see it coming. Indeed. Toranaga and Mariko were my favorites, were my two favorites to watch. Such amazing acting. I hope they win every award they'll be up for. Absolutely. I mean, the cast was just, you cannot take anything away from this cast. They were absolutely phenomenal. Mariko should definitely be up for Best Actress. Toranaga should definitely be up for Best Actor. I feel like Yabushige should probably be up for Best Supporting. And there's a whole slew of other characters that would be well deserving for Best Supporting roles. Everyone from Kiko, Bentaro, Hiramatsu, all of them. The performances on this show were just so freaking good. Collectively as a whole, it's one of the best performances I've seen a cast put on screen in a very long time, indeed. And Sweet Pea brings up a very great point. What's really great about the show is the discussion. It could mean this, it could mean that. It's just that good. And that's what's great about a show like this. And that's why we really look forward to doing these streams so much. We love hearing what you guys have to say and and what kind of lessons you guys took away from watching the finale. I feel like we all kind of look at things through a different lens where two people will see the same thing and maybe react to it in two totally different ways. And that's perfectly natural. We're all human at the end of the day. We're all different. And it's really been fun to kind of come together and see how everybody is responding to certain aspects of the show, what this means to someone, what that means to someone. And again, the ambiguity of some of these events is what creates such a good discussion. Is Toranaga a good guy? Is he a tyrant? It's stuff like that that really creates good discussion. So yeah, 100% Sweet Pea. The discussion around the show has been just as, if not more fun than watching the show itself. And that's thanks to all of you guys here in the chat and my awesome co-hosts that have been joining us for all of these shows. You guys make that possible. You guys make that possible. There's enough material for Season 2. The fallout of Sekigahara through Siege of Osaka should provide sufficient material for 10 episodes. Absolutely. Like, although the Shogun novel ends right here, the real history behind these characters, the real Tokugawa, the real William Adams, they still go on to do so much stuff. They go on to accomplish so many things. Toranaga himself doesn't actually become shogun until around 1603, I believe, is the official start to the Tokugawa shogunate, which is more commonly referred to as the Edo period, whereas we are at the end of the Sengoku period here on Shogun. But yes, although the Shogun novel has ended here and there's no more source material for that, there is still a world of source material to draw on from the actual real history behind these characters that if they wanted to, yeah, they could easily do a second season. Easily they could do a second season if they wanted to. I don't think they will, but they definitely could, and I would watch it. I would love to see a second season, but I don't think it's in the cards, unfortunately. And yeah, Omi finally realized that it was bros before hoes. Yeah, Kiku and Gin were surprisingly absent from this finale. I thought we would at least get one. Yeah, I thought we would at least get one kind of throwaway scene of maybe Gin and Kiko moving into their new quarters in their new plot of land in Edo, maybe setting up the new brothel. Yeah, they were surprisingly missing from the finale. We didn't get any Gin or Kiku. And of course, no freaking Rodriguez either.
I know. Oh, missed opportunity, man. Oh.
But yeah. I get it. Certain amount of screen time. They only have a certain amount of time to tell the story. They have to admit certain stuff. So I totally understand it. But yeah, it would have been nice to just see one kind of parting scene of Gin and Kiku maybe setting up the pleasure house.
Oh man, can you imagine though if Rodriguez just kind of came back into port and just finally saw, I don't know if they would be able to see him though, because they were like before he left Osaka, like Blackthorne, and just said, "Oh, I see you're still here. You staying?" You never left, huh?
He's still alive, son of a bitch.
Because remember, like the first time he said, "You're never leaving." Well, once you're here,
Yeah.
you're never leaving. God, I just would love some kind of like moment callback to that. Would have been good.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think it would have been so awesome. I know it was definitely not going to happen, but the very end of the episode when Blackthorne, Buntaro, and all of them are trying to pull the remains of the Erasmus out of the
Yeah.
sea, if we just see like Rodriguez pull up, in a boat, like "Ahoy, English!" and that freaking that would have been great. "Ahoy, English!
You need help with your ship?
You need a tow? Yeah, we need a tow. Get your ass over here." Yeah, I was missing Rodriguez. Just a huge fan of the actor that I know you guys are as well from being big fans of Lost. It would have been cool to see him one more time. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I miss
Yeah.
him. He left us too soon.
Yeah. It is a historical event. We don't know. Anyone could have it right. You don't have to be either ruthless and be 5 steps ahead to survive. Very true. Very true. Very good point. Indeed. Best leading actor Pedro Pascal versus Sonata for sure will happen. Ooh, Pedro Pascal versus I think Hideyoki's got him beat by a mile, but Pedro has been known to deliver some good roles from time to time. Indeed, indeed. Everything was done with tiny facial movements. No other body parts is moving but the flared nostril. Again, yeah, the facial expressions, especially in this final scene to begin with, where it was just so good. And yeah, let's go through the final scene here between the two. Where Yabushige even goes as far to ask, if you are the winner, anything is possible. And we get him, Yabushige, asking even Shogun. And I love that one line from Yabushige where he says, you're no different from the rest of us with your third heart, which is another callback to what we got earlier on at the beginning of the season, where Mariko is explaining how everyone has 3 different hearts. One that they show the rest of the world, one that they show their friends, and one that they only show to themselves in private. So I love that callback here with Yabushige is kind of saying, you're no different than the rest of us with your secret heart. You just wanted to be Shogun the whole time. So it was just fun back and forth between these two.
So good.
Yeah.
It was almost like the whole episode. I mean, they just gave it to us so, like, just the whole thing, man. Oh,
Well, Yabushige always wanted to know Toranaga's plan, and he finally found out his plan. He was asking for it the entire run of the show. I wish he would just tell me what he's going to do. Just tell me so I can help. Well, now you know. And you won't live to see it.
Yeah, why tell a dead man the future? Which, again, just great callbacks from earlier episodes. And even in the previous episode, we see Yabushige, I believe it's in episode 8 or episode 9, begging Mariko, what is Toranaga planning? I can help. It's like he's always so pissed about being in the dark and being kept in the dark and not knowing what Toranaga is planning. And in the final moments, he finds out just as he lops his head.
But now, question. Do you think that if Toranaga did tell Yabushige his plan, Yabushige actually would have been loyal to Toranaga?
Interesting. Like if Yabushige knew from the very beginning everything that Toranaga was planning, would that have made him would that have incentivized him to be more loyal? Maybe.
Just in that trust, like, oh, you're really gonna trust me when nobody else? Like, okay, do you think that maybe would have just wheeled him in just a little more to his side?
I think it could have potentially. It seems like Yabushige's big reason for kind of playing both sides of the fence is he wasn't quite sure whose side was going to come up. Where at the beginning, he certainly felt like Ishido was on the winning side, so he's trying to worm his way into Ishido's good graces. But had he, like you said, in hindsight, had he known everything that Toranaga was planning, maybe he would have played things a little differently. I guess that's a great question. And I'd love to see what the chat thinks on that as well. Do you guys think Yabushige would have played things differently had Toranaga filled him in on the plan from the beginning? I don't know. What do you think, Scarlett?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dana. I'm gonna have to kind of go with what you're saying, Jeremy. It's definitely possible, considering how he was just wanting to stay alive, and maybe if he knew how, well, I don't know. That's a hard
would
one,
that have
Dana.
made him think that
I'm sitting here trying
Toranaga
to
was
think.
then the winning side, and that that's the side he would like? Would that one gesture of his plan made Yabushige think that, okay, maybe you are the winning side, so I'm going to be with you?
But even like Doc Haid, yeah, 'cause
Maybe.
he
You
is. He
never
was
know.
very untrustworthy. That's what I'm trying to think. Like,
Yeah,
because
that's
there were points where he kind of like knew, or he thought he knew what was going on, and he was still going to backstab.
yeah. Even so, as far as just a few episodes ago, he was still trying to create some kind of bridge between him and Ishido through Toranaga's brother. So even, like you said, Doc might have it right where sometimes the tiger just doesn't change their stripes. I mean, Yabushige is notoriously untrustworthy. Maybe nothing would have changed that. So I see both sides, but
Because it could have,
I think Doc's right though. I don't think it would have changed it.
it could have hinged on the fact that whether he thought that Toranaga was going to win with his plan or not, would be more where I
Yeah.
would think that he would side with him.
Yeah, it's but again, it's definitely a very interesting question to ask. How would things have played out any differently? Maybe.
Yeah, just because
And-
even in this moment, like he's like, I wish I would be alive to see this.
yeah,
Like, so that makes
Yeah.
me think, like, had Toranaga just told him, not that it was, I'm just wondering, like, would that have changed anything
hmm
for
yeah,
Yabushiki, in the sense of maybe he wouldn't have to be getting his head lopped off right now.
yeah, yeah. Maybe he wouldn't have tried so hard to kind of win Ishido's favor if he maybe knew what was coming. Yeah, it's an interesting question. That's for sure. That's for sure. And yes, 100% agree with this. Sweet Pea hits the nail on the head. Hats off to the chat. Incredibly observant you guys have been with all the tie-ins from previous episodes. Absolutely. And again, that's why I love doing these streams and these discussions, because it's always just so fun to hear everybody's take on things. Everybody in the chat, everybody on panel. I truly enjoy just talking about this show with everybody and seeing how you guys, took in the entire series and the episode as a whole. So yeah, I mean, cannot tip my hat off more to the chat. You guys always absolutely kill it. Love these discussions. Kai says, non-starter. Toranaga doesn't trust anyone that way. If Yabushige is not that faithful when his life was spared many times, he would still betray when he felt the plan was not panning out. That's a very good point as well. Yabushige just seems to be one of those characters when he sees the wind, changing direction a little bit, he's automatically changing course right away. He's not waiting. So that's a good point, Kai. It's I'm starting to think that you and Doc are on the money on this, where maybe it wouldn't have changed much. He is who he is at the end of the day. But it is a great discussion nonetheless. Hi, Jeremy Maro from Japan. Well, welcome all the way from the land of the rising sun, the beautiful Japan. And thank you so much to everybody who is tuning in tonight, wherever you guys are tuning in from, whether it's here in the States, abroad, across the pond, wherever you guys are watching from. We very much appreciate everybody taking some time to come and hang out with us for a little bit. You guys are the absolute best. Yes, Kai, winning by an inch, a mile, or a smile is still winning 200 years or more of peace, which is true. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning, in the words of Dominic Toretto. Hidden past episode callback. Yabu rates Josen's death as the most badass. Yeah, I mean, Josen's death was, I totally understand why that was rated pretty high for Yabushige, to the point where he even wanted his own death to be death by cannon. So, good point, Rooftop Korean. Very good point. We met Yabu's writings, his will, and his death poem. I feel like his fate was already sealed. Yeah, again, it seems like the writing was kind of already on the wall there for Yabushige, especially by the time we get to this final episode. I get the sense that he feels like he knew the end of his rope was approaching, especially from the time that he lands in Ajiro and gets brought before Toranaga. I feel like from that point on, he knows his fate is sealed. At least it kind of seemed that way. That was the kind of feeling that I was getting, where Yabushige was almost kind of giving himself over to the fact that this is his fate and he's not trying to fight it anymore like he used to. So, good point. Very good point. Rodriguez was great, but I would have loved to seen him in the last episode. A good old Richard from Lost. He was even great in that last episode, seeing he had a gray hair finally. I know, right? And we are huge fanatics of Lost. Like, I am such a big fan of Lost, and I know Dana and Scarlett are as well. Where we were so excited when we saw that Richard from Lost was going to be in Shogun. We almost didn't even recognize him at first. I believe you brought it up, Dana. You were like, wait a minute, is that Richard from Lost? Because he looks so different.
She recognized the eyeliner or the natural liner.
I was looking and I was like, wait a minute. God, do you guys, Jeremy, you were like, hold on a second.
Like,
holy
no.
shit, it is.
Wait, it is.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him at first. So yeah, until you pointed that out, I had to do a double take, and I was like, holy shit, it is him. But yeah, no, huge fan of Lost. Lost is actually my favorite series of all time. With other than Twilight Zone, I think Twilight Zone is probably my favorite series of all time, with Lost a very close second. But Lost is definitely one of the best stories ever told. So much that I always even keep this clip on deck to make the ladies sad.
Oceanic Flight 8.
Did you see that?
See what?
You played dirty.
We're already on like an emotional episode, and did you just throw that in there?
Right?
Yeah, so as you can see, we are very big fans of Lost. Definitely, like I said, Lost is my favorite show of all time, at least my favorite story ever told. Love Twilight Zone, but Lost tells the best story I've ever seen in television form, ever, hands down. I just can never get enough of Lost, for
That
sure.
music, man.
The
Ravy's
music
wiggling
gets me
his
every
toes
time.
and stuff.
And it's just
Every
like
time
the
it
best
gets me.
collage of memories. Sorry.
It is.
Did it, Jeremy.
I mean, you want to talk about endings that just completely stuck the landing. I know not everybody loved the Lost ending, but for me, the ending to Lost was as perfect of an ending to a story that can ever be written, in my opinion, anyway. I loved the ending of Lost. But yeah, sorry for the distraction there. Michael Lockhart says, one more time, what are the clouds but an excuse for the sky? What is life but an escape from death? Hell yes, Michael
Oh
Lockhart.
God, y'all are killing me, man.
How much
That's so
better? Well, I
beautiful.
believe that's Yabushige's real poem
Yes.
from the book.
Yeah, he put
And
it in
how
there
much better
earlier.
would that have fit that scene? I mean, you look at the kind of feeling of that scene, and it's a very somber moment. You have Yabushige kind of saying his farewells to his nephew, who he kind of considers his son. That poem would have just been so much more fitting in that time period than him wanting to be eaten by dogs. It just, I don't know, doesn't land as well, I think. And sorry, Kaylee C. Mandy, if we made you sad.
I know.
Sorry.
Like, I'm right there with you, honey, man. He's trying to make us cry.
Right,
I'm just
right.
kidding. It's beautiful though. This episode is beautiful. That was beautiful. That poem was beautiful. Thank you, Michael. It was really nice.
Yes. Thank you, Michael, for that. Appreciate that, my friend. Yeah, just two phenomenal, great series. I mean, we could get stuck into the weeds talking Lost any day of the week, and maybe we will do some more Lost content in the future. We were actually covering all of Lost, and then Shogun came around and just became a little bit too much to juggle all at once. But now that Shogun is ending and we have a little bit of time in between now and House of the Dragon starting, maybe we can find some time for a Lost stream or two here and there. Because I always love talking Lost, for sure.
We got a whole encyclopedia of content.
That we do, thanks to yours truly, Dana Marie.
We'll just pick a page.
Yep.
Randomly pick pages.
Yep. Good stuff. But yeah, I'll always Lost will always have a very special place in my heart in terms of best series of all time. Love Lost. Love John Locke. Love Sawyer. Love Kate. I love them all. They're all great. They're all freaking great. But this is great too. And again, I really, in terms of the overall ending, maybe having some kind of incomplete feels in terms of not seeing, Ishido get his comeuppance, not actually seeing Toranaga become Shogun. Other than that, the actual individual character endings, again, like we said earlier, or like I was saying earlier, I do feel like the individual character endings, the story arcs for each character, did end as well as you possibly could have expected. And Yabushige's ended probably the best. And I mean, how great is this scene right here where Yabushige just, and talk about Yabushige having no hesitation whatsoever when it comes to him committing seppuku. He
Right?
just fucking,
Oh,
no
Gangster.
hesitation, just
with that
gangster. Holy shit.
smile. That was
But
oh,
that, I mean, that's very
sociopath.
much him. That's
Savage.
totally him. I totally can see him being a type of character that does kind of do it like that. Well, I'm not waiting. Let me just do this already. Boom! And he does it. Unlike Blackthorne, who kind of sits there and takes his time and is almost waiting for Toranaga to stop him. But no, this was such a good ending for such a great character arc, and I love the smile between the two at the end. And the smile can mean a whole myriad of different things. But part of the smile almost is kind of Yabushige smiling back at Toranaga with thinking, like, holy crap, we're not as different as I originally thought. Especially with Yabushige finally kind of seeing the real Toranaga here in this moment, seeing his real secret heart, knowing that Toranaga did kind of get his hands dirty in some ways in order to achieve his end. I almost feel like this smile between between Yabushige and Toranaga is almost them kind of acknowledging, like, okay, Toranaga and Yabushige, they're not quite as different as we maybe originally thought, in some ways at least. That's kind of what I took from it. Love
Yeah,
it.
it was
This was
good.
such a good.
It
'Cause
was
I
like they
first
saw
watched
each
it.
other. They saw each
Yes.
other.
Yeah. I first watched it, I thought he was slightly just a sociopath because the smile was just kind of creepy. But then, like, after you kind of that second watch, and you really take it in, yeah,
Mhm.
he
Yeah, again,
definitely knew
part of it could
something.
have just been that, where Yabushige is just so like obsessed with death, he's finally dying, that he's like fucking happy in the moment. There's part of that there too, maybe. The sociopathic tendencies. But no, I really enjoyed that. I don't know that I don't know why that thought just kind of came to mind, that it kind of just almost seemed like a mutual respect thing there in that final moment. The smile back and forth, where they
Mhm.
kind of acknowledge each other there. Um, Good scene, freaking great scene. This was definitely my favorite scene of the episode for sure.
Yabu was like, "You're good," and Toranaga was like, "Yeah, I know I'm good. I know."
The emotion in here, never saw Lost and always heard the ending sucks. New perspective. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and I never want to insult anyone's take on things, but I feel for everyone out there that thinks the Lost ending sucks, I get the feeling that they maybe just didn't pay attention enough. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in Lost. There's so many answers that need to be explained, and not all of it is just outright explained out there in the open. Some of it you kind of have to put together and piece together for yourself as the audience. That's one thing I always really enjoyed about Lost. The writing doesn't hold the audience hand. They're not holding your hand throughout the series. They're letting you kind of figure some things out on your own, especially in the ending. So that was kind of my take on the ending. I feel like if people didn't like the ending of Lost, of course, anyone is entitled to like or not like something. But I feel like the majority of the criticism that was coming for the ending of Lost was very misplaced, because a lot of it was saying that they didn't answer everything, that there was too much left open-ended. And I didn't get that feeling in any way, shape, or form. I feel like every single little question that I had about Lost was answered by the time the final episode aired. I got every answer I was looking for. And again, I think it just comes back to maybe not everybody was paying attention as closely as they maybe should have. But that's just my take on Lost ending. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, it was definitely complex. That last couple episodes were really you had to. It was so much going on, and they were throwing a lot at you that yeah, it took a few. Like I think even I watched it years later. I watched it a couple months back or whatever, and it was still. I had to rewatch those final episodes just to kind of really get my brain around what was going on. But once you get it and like it really sinks in, oh man, it's good.
Yeah. There's just so much stuff happening just right below the surface there on the Lost ending, where again, it's not one of those endings that just explains everything for you and holds your hand. You kind of got to figure some things out for yourself. And I like series like that. I like series that treats their audience like, like adults, and that kind of challenges them in certain ways. So I appreciate that from time to time.
Yeah, and I feel a
Uh,
lot of people who didn't like the Lost ending didn't get it. And then
they didn't
once
get it.
like someone explained it to them, or like I would talk and I'd be like, they're like, oh, okay, now that makes more sense.
Yeah. A lot of people thought that they were dead the entire time. A lot of people thought that that's what the ending meant, and that's not what happened at all. That isn't even remotely close to what happened. They were not dead the whole time. Everything that happened on the island actually happened to them. The only time they were dead were during the one side flashes that we get in the very final episode, the very final season, which is a little kind of purgatory place that they kind of created for themselves in order to find each other and move on together. But no, a lot of people kind of took that ending to think that they were dead the entire time, and that is not the case. And I've had so many conversations with people that were just dead set convinced that they were dead the whole time, and I'm like, no, that is how, like, you're missing it. No, that is not what
Dad
happened.
tells him, Eddie, because it's the one line, right, that the dad tells Jack. Or was his name Jack? Now I forget all these people's names. When they're in the church or whatever, and he's telling him like, no, all that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, you're real. Everything that's ever happened to you is real, and everybody that's there lived their full lives. This is just a point in time where, after all of them are well, long, and dead, they created this place to find each other and to move on together. Because the most important aspects of each of one of their lives was the time that they spent together on the island. So that's pretty much the Lost ending in a nutshell. But we'll get into that a little bit deeper on the Lost stream for sure, because just so good. So good. Never say Lost either. So how would you rate the ending on a scale of Game of Thrones season 8? Ugh.
Well,
don't even
You
remind me
found
of
Jeremy's weakness. You found
don't
his
even
Achilles
remind me.
heel.
Game of Thrones ends at season 6, as far as I'm concerned. Now I'm waiting on the book to see how the real ending comes, if it ever comes.
Yeah.
But no, I would put the Lost ending solid 10 out of 10. Easily,
Yes.
like, Lost is one of the only endings I would give easily 10 avocados out of 10. The Game of Thrones ending, I give it like a 4 out of 10. I give it a 4, maybe a 5. There were certain
nice.
aspects
I'm
of the
trying to.
ending that I enjoyed.
Yeah,
Like Jon Snow.
that's being nice.
That's being nice. That's being very generous. There were certain aspects that I enjoyed about the ending of Game of Thrones. I feel like Jon Snow's ending was pretty good for the most part. At least maybe that's just my personal bias. But I never wanted Jon Snow to become the king. I never wanted him on the Iron Throne. That's just not who his character is. Jon going back north to the real north was the best possible ending for his character. I didn't even want to see Jon become the Lord of Winterfell. I feel like Jon truly belongs north of the Wall. That is who Jon is. That's where he was always most happiest, with Ghost, north of the Wall, with Ygritte. That is who Jon Snow is. So Jon returning north of the Wall at the end, that was one of the saving graces for the Game of Thrones finale that I actually did kind of like. I appreciated Jon going back north where he truly belongs. But other than that, a lot of the other endings were just shit.
I would have liked to have seen that battle. It was so dark. I would have liked to see it a little more. That would have been a little more enjoyable. Thought something was wrong with my TV, but then come to find out, no.
Yeah.
It was just dark.
Yeah. Man, yeah. I messed up with Game of Thrones. I watched House of the Dragon, and then had to go all the way back to watch Game of Thrones to understand more. LOL, says Leo V. And actually, yeah, a lot. You're not alone. Actually, we actually heard a lot of people who have kind of found our channel through our House of the Dragon content. A lot of people have said similar things, where they watched House of the Dragon first, and then they went back to kind of catch up on Game of Thrones. So yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people are discovering Game of Thrones now. But yeah, now back to Shogun, as Brian says. But yeah, phenomenal ending for Yabushige. I absolutely loved his performance from start to finish. In terms of character arcs that were just very satisfying from start to finish, Yabushige's arc is up there among the most satisfying for me personally.
Yeah. I even liked, I think it's when he first sat down with him, and he's just like, all the days I could have seen or had.
Yeah.
And he kind of talks about that. And I was just like, man, it's just like, you're about to, like, you're about to get your head cut off, but y'all are sitting down like friends, just reminiscing and just having this chat about, what could have been, like your old men, on your deathbed, literally. Like, it's just,
Yep.
oh no,
Yeah.
it was so crazy.
No, it did have that feeling. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's just, like you said, there's this overwhelming sense of calm throughout this entire finale where you would expect things to maybe get ramped up a little bit. This is the final episode. Shit's coming to a head. You know, you got the climax. Although I feel like in many reasons, the climactic moment of the show happened in episode 9 with the death of Mariko and that version of Crimson Sky. I feel like that was the true kind of climax of the entire series, with this episode almost feeling a little bit like a epilogue of sorts. But yeah, the calm feeling that they kind of went with for this finale was just very fitting. It fit the tone of the overall series up until this point, and they didn't deviate just in the final episode just to have a big spectacle, which I do respect. And I feel like the music had a really big part in conveying that overwhelming sense of calm. Even when Yabushige is about to get his freaking head lopped off, he's as calm as we've ever seen him in the entire series. Especially considering he was stark raving mad like a day prior.
I know.
So yeah,
It's so crazy. Like, I think he was like, when he was going crazy, was like the wildest anybody got in the episode, really.
mm.
I mean, except for the heads. I mean, the heads on the spikes,
Yeah,
those were.
yeah. Heads on the spikes were pretty interesting. But no, yeah, as Sweepy says, the writers could do a series of younger versions of these characters. It would be fascinating. Absolutely. I would watch that in a heartbeat. I actually did a video on the younger years of Toranaga, or the real version of Toranaga, Tokugawa. I did a video that covers pretty much everything that he went through from the time he was a child up until the beginning of the events of Shogun. So if anyone ever does want to learn a little bit more about the real Tokugawa, I do have a video on the channel called Meet the Real Toranaga, and I go in very much in depth on everything that he went through leading up to Shogun. And it's fascinating. Like you said, it's super fascinating, everything that happens to these characters even before the events of Shogun. The real history behind these characters, I dare say, is even more interesting than the show was itself. Like, there's so much stuff that happens before and after these events, where they could easily do a season 2 if they wanted to. I mean, it wouldn't be based on the James Clavell Shogun. It would be based more on real history. But there's so much that Toranaga still goes on to do after this episode, where they could easily do another season. Hell, like, we didn't even get to see the big climactic battle. It's alluded to in a way that it's going to happen a month from now. So we really didn't get a full finality ending to a lot of these events, in ways that we maybe could have. But yeah, if they wanted to do a season 2, they certainly could have. But again, I'm not holding out a lot of hope. I get the feeling we probably won't get one, but I would love to see one. Leo V also would like to see a prequel of Shogun, their lives leading up to the Taiko's death. Yeah, again, and that there's so much interesting stuff that happens up until the death of the Taiko. Even seeing the Taiko himself come into power, and how the Taiko comes into power, and how the Taiko and Toranaga start off as enemies. Actually, they actually fight a battle between the two of them, a battle that Toranaga wins, but in the end, Toranaga ends up submitting to the Taiko. There's so much fascinating history that happens even before the events of Shogun that, yeah, I would love to see a prequel. I'd watch it in a second. Best arc, comedy, tragedy, strategy, and he never changed as a person. Very good point. If you're referring to Yabushige, absolutely. Like, his arc, it was one of the more complete arcs we got in the entire series. And yeah, we got a little bit of everything from Yabushige. We got the comedy, the tragedy, the strategy, all of it. And yeah, he didn't really change much as a person. He kind of remained true to who he was, like him or hate him, for good or for worse. He kind of remained true to who he was throughout the entire series. So that's a good point, Brian. Very good point. Game of Thrones ending was like the ending of a frayed robe in comparison to the clean cut of Shogun. That's a good point. Very good point. He was a true student of Sun Tzu, and it shows. Absolutely. Toranaga, absolutely. When it comes to the teachings of Sun Tzu and the art of war, anyone who is ever been kind of fascinated with military strategy, and not just military strategy, strategies for defeating your opponent on pretty much any playing field, whether it's battle, mental manipulation, reading The Art of War is such a freaking good read. I would highly recommend anyone, if you guys like Shogun and you like the master strategist side of Toranaga, I would highly recommend reading Sun Tzu's Art of War. It's such a good read. Really good read. The novel Taiko by Yoshikawa is about the young Tokugawa and Nobunaga and their rise to power. Yeah, and again, there's some really good history there that would make a phenomenal prequel. Because again, before even the Taiko comes into power, yes, Oda Nobunaga was the previous shogun. Oda Nobunaga was actually the only one to hold the title of shogun until Toranaga came around, as the Taiko was notoriously not a shogun, just the ruler of Japan. He wasn't actually referred to as shogun. So yeah, there's plenty of material for them to draw on there if they ever wanted to do a prequel. I'd watch it. Would you guys watch a prequel?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, with this world, but the before and after, yeah, I'm good.
As much as I want to see more, I'd say just let it go out with a bang. Otherwise, these new things may not live up to what we got. Looking at you, El Camino, and that's another very good point, Rooftop Korean, where sometimes, and again, I do kind of respect their decision to kind of just do one season, one miniseries, and committing to just making this one season as good as they possibly could. Whereas sometimes when we see stories like this get stretched out over multiple seasons, sometimes the later seasons end up kind of the quality gets diluted a little bit. And we see shows kind of falter because of it. Like, look at The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is a perfect example of a show that started off so good, but kind of overstayed its welcome and ended up kind of really dropping in quality by the time you get to those later seasons. So I
get a movie?
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Can we get like a movie of the battle?
Like a movie version of the Battle of Sekigahara? That could be interesting.
A TV movie, yeah.
That could be interesting. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, and again, El Camino is another really good example of that, as where you look at the ending of Breaking Bad, and it was just superb, absolutely superb in every way, shape, or form. Breaking Bad is one of those endings that you really hope to see as an audience member. As an audience member that's really invested in a TV series, you want to have that really satisfying feeling when you watch a finale. And Breaking Bad definitely gave me that. It was such a good finale. And then a few years later, they come out with El Camino, and it was just absolute trash. I mean, just from my standpoint, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that liked El Camino, and that's totally cool. I could not stand El Camino, and I thought that it did Jesse's character no service whatsoever. So yeah, I was not a big fan of El Camino. They should have just left it alone with Breaking Bad and focused on the prequel, the Better Call Saul prequel, which was freaking great. The prequel was phenomenal, much better than El Camino. But yeah, sometimes overstaying your welcome can kind of be detrimental to the overall quality of a TV series. So again, I do kind of, on one hand, really respect their commitment to just doing one season and doing it well as they possibly could and getting out, and not stretching this thing on to 4 or 5 seasons and potentially ruining the ending with it dropping in quality. So on one hand, the fan in me would have loved to see a second season, just the pure fan side of me. But on the other side, the more when I analyze it a little more critically, totally understand them doing one and done, for sure. Sweet Pea is saying, good night to everyone. Jeremy, Dana, Scarlett, thank you for the great chat. Well, thank you so much, Sweet Pea, for joining us this evening. And as we are getting ready to approach the 2-hour mark, we are also going to get ready to close down as well. But before we do, we got to end this stream like we end all of our streams, asking all of you guys in the chat. I know we did some ratings last night, but just in case anyone wasn't here, or just in case maybe your rating changed from last night to now, how exactly would you guys rate the final episode of Shogun? 1 being horrible, 10 being perfect. How would you guys rate the ending of Shogun? Scarlett, where do you put it?
Yeah, I mean, even after watching it, I still give it a 9 for the episode, the final episode. Yeah, I'm gonna stay with the 9.
Nice. What about you, Dana?
I'm an 8 for the episode, just because I did have that anticipation. I wanted to see a little battle, just a little something. I'm with everybody. I want a little snid, like little taste, but I'm an overall 9 for the series.
Okay, awesome. I like it. Yeah, for me, I think my rating kind of is staying similar to last night. I feel like this episode as a whole, I would give a solid 8 out of 10. But the overall series as a whole, I would definitely give a 9 out of 10 easily, maybe even a 9.5. It was that freaking
Oh
good.
yeah, definitely 9.5 for the whole. I want to give it a 10, but just because the ending did fall a
Yeah.
little short, I can't
hmm
quite give it that. I'm trying to be fair, even though
Same.
I want to give it a 10. Trust me, I do, but I know
Yeah.
that's just me, the fan in me.
No, and I'm right there with you. I was kind of teetering back and forth as well, where part of me wants to give it a 10, but just the very subtle, incomplete feeling I felt as a fan after the finale, that kind of changed it from a guaranteed 10 to like a 9, 9.5. But again, still a phenomenal series and still one of the best shows I've seen in many, many years. Khaleesi Mandy rates this one a 10 out of 10. Awesome. Griff Vert gives it a 10 as well. We got an 8 from Ejovi. Awesome. Love it. We got a 10 out of 10 avocados from Doc Hayes. We have a 9.8 Crimson Herrings from our boy Kai. Nice. We have a 9 from Buddha Cafe, a 6 from Leo V. Oof. Hey, we like seeing it. We want your honest answers, guys. If it's a 6, then it is a 6. We got a 9 from Will Smalls. Awesome. We have a 9 avocados for overall and a 9.5 out of 10 for the earthquakes. Yeah, the earthquakes were just incredibly well filmed. And I know Michael really enjoyed the earthquake scene earlier in the season. It probably was one of the best earthquake scenes I've ever seen filmed. So I agree with you there, Mike. The episode was an 8, but the season was a 9.3 overall, says Will Smalls. Awesome. A 9 for the whole show, says Leo V. Awesome. Very good rating. Yabu looking for the catfish was 10. That was good. That was just, again,
Yes.
the comedic levity that we got from Yabushige's character cannot be understated. He really did provide just some really great laughs throughout the entire series that I really enjoyed it. Oh, that's right. One more scene I did want to discuss right before we head out was this scene was really great as well. Not just the Blackthorne seppuku scene, but hearing Muraji's kind of side of his story and see him kind of coming out and letting Blackthorne know that he's not just this peasant fisherman, that he is one of Toranaga's top-ranking samurai. Although we didn't get a whole lot of Muraji, he was another kind of MVP throughout the season where
Yes.
every scene he was in, I really enjoyed.
He was always like right in the background when they were
Yep.
there. Like he was there.
Yep. Yeah, he was good. And this was a great kind of it was great to kind of see him kind of reveal himself to Blackthorne. And it probably helped Blackthorne kind of come to terms with what he is as well, because here we see Mujari, where yes, on one side he is one of Toranaga's prized samurai, but he is also a Christian. And I love how he explains to Blackthorne that he is both of these things. He's not one or the other. It's possible for someone to be more than just one thing. And I really think that is going to go on to help Blackthorne in the rest of his days as well, because we saw Blackthorne just a few episodes ago was very conflicted on who he was. He went back to his old crew, and his own crew kind of felt foreign to him at that point. And on the other hand, he felt like he would never fully be accepted here in Japan either. So Blackthorne kind of wrestling with his identity. I do think this scene from Muraji is really going to help Blackthorne in terms of discovering who he is as a person, that it doesn't need to be this binary answer. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can be a Christian and still be a samurai at the same time. So I really loved this scene. This was a great scene. Good stuff. Good stuff. Million from Brian, absolutely. Episode was an 11 out of 10 avocados from an Asian perspective, which is awesome,
Nice.
and that's another really great thing. I love to see the perspective from the Asian demographic as well, because again, this is your history. I love to see how you guys feel like how it was portrayed, and if nothing else, it must be pretty cool to see that. I imagine so many people have really found just a whole new level of respect and understanding of the Japanese culture that we maybe didn't have prior. So, if nothing else, I really just have developed such a deep respect for all of the history here, and that is large part due to Shogun portraying that history in such a authentic and honest way. So yeah, it's really shared the Japanese culture with the rest of the world in such a great way. So that must be really that must be something that people should be proud of, because it's
Hmm.
a fascinating history with such fascinating people.
Yes,
Um,
it
it's just
really was like
yeah,
the show went to such detail, and like you said, watching some of the little podcast stuff, kind of like into the episode stuff, where they really
yeah,
tell you where this comes from or what the meaning is,
yeah,
and
yep,
then just wanting to kind of know some of the lines that they say. Like I think even Yabu said something as they're taking him away from Toranaga when he first comes back, and he said, "Oh God, I forgot the god's name or whatever," but it was just
yeah.
it's
May
that little.
smile upon me. Yeah,
Yeah, those
yep,
little things, like, 'cause it makes you wanna know more, so you kinda get into the world, and yeah, it's beautiful. I
mm,
absolutely, the tea ceremonies, everything, how they went to the details of the
yep.
clothing, the hair, everything. It was just it really got you involved in a world that maybe you didn't know anything about prior.
Mm. Indeed, and honestly, if I'm going to take anything away from this series, not only was it incredibly enjoyable, but that aspect, like you said, Scarlett, that's almost even not almost, that's even more important than just being entertained watching a good series. If you come away from this show developing a deeper respect for Japanese culture, then that is 10 times better than just enjoying a good show. Like if you actually got something out of it and learned something about it, that is the most rewarding part of watching a series like this, when you actually do develop that deep fascination for a culture that maybe isn't your own, that you was kind of foreign to you prior. So yeah, very good point.
But it was
Very
also the
good
little
point.
details that this show did. Like in this episode, when Toranaga's brother like slid across the like room to give
Yep.
Ishido like the
Yep.
paper, the way Mariko walked and like the way they like carried themselves, it was such to the way they like folded their like robes and moved things and did things. It was so like, oh, it just made the culture look beautiful, like flawless
Yeah.
almost.
There's a certain elegance in almost everything that they do, to the point where they have kind of mastered the art of everything that they do, whether it's calligraphy, something as simple as the tea ceremony, or putting your kimono on the right way. Like they really have mastered the element of being elegant in almost every
Mhm.
aspect of life, and that really comes through here on the show. Just the sheer elegance of the culture as a whole is phenomenal.
Yeah, they'd send the head back in a nice little box. Cute.
Indeed.
Present everybody sitting down like a calm. It was just the calmness in
Yeah.
in the show, where most of us are thinking, okay, we're gonna get these like, now I don't want to say ninja style battles, but samurai battles. We're gonna get all this like good sword fighting and stuff. But it was no, it was
Mhm.
more this
Much
calm
grounded.
understanding of life and death, and
Yeah.
what your purpose is, and how everybody kind of plays a part, and then just yeah, so good.
It was. Yeah, it was. It was just the way that they portrayed everything about the lifestyle, everything about this time period in Japanese history. They really portrayed everything in such a very elegant way, in a very elegant manner, that yeah, if you don't go away from this show with a deeper appreciation and respect for the Japanese culture, then you just weren't paying attention, I think. Because
Yeah.
it's right there for you to see in every scene the dedication that went into this production. And again, I applaud them for that. But yeah, I so would have wanted him to at least pull out a koi, says Michael Lockhart.
I
Yeah, he's
also
a
like
character.
love the
It's
honor.
funny.
I don't know what you guys
Yeah.
think, but just the honor of this time period and how
Mhm.
Blackthorne had to come with terms to where they weren't wasteful with life. The death meant something.
Yeah.
Like even when that whole situation happened with the gardener, like how just the honor behind certain situations and what they had to go through, the way women had to carry themselves, and like Could you imagine having your newborn baby ripped out of your arms to be murdered because your husband got up and said something wrong?
Yeah, it's pretty harsh. It's a pretty harsh punishment, but again, it's their way of life. It's and again, the culture clash that we see on display during the first half of this season, those were some of the most, those were some of the best episodes to watch when you see Blackthorne coming from this Western point of view, meeting this culture that is incredibly foreign to him, where he just doesn't understand how things work here, and he doesn't even understand the full weight of the words that he even carries now, him being a Hatamoto. Again, yeah, the scene with the Jiro, with the gardener there, that was probably one of my favorite episodes, and probably one of my favorite scenes, when he kind of goes back and fixes the rock after the earthquake. Just little things like that, the little signs of respect that we see along the way. It's little things like that that really made this show like next level good. It went from good to great, really. Muraji only Muraji only one that Toranaga didn't sacrifice. There was a time he almost died, and Toranaga stopped it. Very true, Leo V. Very true. When Yabushige is looking for the spy within his village, and Muraji becomes aware of this, he actually offers himself up. He says, please let me offer myself up. But Toranaga says, no, I need you. Find another spy. So yeah, he was protecting Muraji more than most. It's a good point. Arrow Chick is staying with a 9 out of 10, which again, great rating. Miraji scene also reinforced the position that Mariko Sama was in by saying what he said when he revealed himself to Blackthorne. Absolutely, it definitely, very good point, Kai. It'll give Blackthorne a deeper understanding of what Mariko herself was living with in her everyday life, being on one hand a Christian and being on the other hand samurai. It's again, you kind of see the duality of the two different identities that both of these characters were struggling with, and it seems like Muraji definitely kind of came to terms with the two different aspects of his identity, and I think Mariko did there in the end as well. Now we'll see if Blackthorne can kind of come to that same realization. So very good point, Kai. Very good point. To think the New Testament of the Bible wasn't published in Japan till 1613, so Catholic missionaries had a lot of work to make believers in the 1500s. Yeah, this is very true, and they actually touched on a little bit of the history of Catholicism during this time period and after. In the episode 10 podcast. If you guys haven't seen the podcast for this episode, I would definitely check it out. It's on the FX Network's YouTube channel. And you should probably go back and watch them for every episode if you haven't seen them yet already. They really go in depth, and they cover some things that the episodes themselves don't really have time to cover. So the podcasts have been very rewarding, and they do go into some kind of detail in terms of the history of Catholicism and Christianity in the country of Japan during that time period. It's a pretty good listen. Definitely a pretty good listen. Mariko having to use the restroom walk and the sake crab walk. Yeah, the crab walk. I like it. I love this community, how respectful, fully you treated this culture instead of just comparing it to the Western culture of knightly chivalry. You guys built a very civil community here. Congrats. Well, thank you for that, Kai. That really does mean the world to us. Whenever we kind of cover a TV show, movie, anything that we talk about here, we try to analyze it as honest and as best as we can, as individuals. But you guys in the chat are the ones who really made this kind of community what it is. You guys in the chat are 100% to thank for how just fun these streams and how pleasant these streams have been. Whether it's Shogun that we cover, whether it's whether it's House of the Dragon, Lost, anything that we talk about here on these channels. It's everybody in the chat that has really made these discussions so fun. I genuinely look forward to our streams every week because I cannot wait to talk to all of you guys in the chat and get your thoughts and theories on everything. And I do feel like everybody has been incredibly respectful for the most part, which is one thing we really love to see. It's totally fine if two people disagree on a certain matter. Obviously, we're all different. We're all complex human beings. No two people are going to see the exact same thing in the exact same way. So it's totally fine disagreeing with people. as long as you're doing it in a respectful manner. I feel like everybody has been so respectful, whether we agree on something, whether we disagree on something, whether we see things one way or another way. The discussion that we've had on all of these topics has been so fun. And yeah, that's in large part thanks to all of you guys in the chat, just bringing a really good positive vibe to each and every one of these streams. I cannot thank each and every one of you enough for that. You guys have been so awesome. So awesome. And yeah, who's ready for an extended edition? I'm ready. I mean, my hand's in the air. Let's get the extended edition. Absolutely. Ladies of the Willow, probably one of my favorite scenes where Mariko interrupts for the lady to John, and the way the lady disappeared behind Mariko. Yeah, that's another really good scene, especially Gin. Gin was another very fascinating character where she was very similar to Toranaga in terms of her level of intelligence and her situational awareness. She picked up in a split second, she picked up on there being something more between Blackthorne and Mariko just from one conversation. So Gin was incredibly intuitive and a good character. Doc A says, I love these streams. Well, thank you so much. And we very much appreciate doing these streams. I love these streams as well. And again, it's because I love getting on here and hanging out and talking with all of you guys in the chat and hearing your takes and your thoughts and your theories on all of these shows that we cover. You guys make these streams what they are. Very much appreciate it. It was just raw and beautiful. Indeed. When you look at Shogun as a whole, very raw, very raw. The tone of it is super serious with some good comedic breaks, but incredibly beautiful in the way that is portrayed overall, for sure. Absolutely. So do we decide if Hiromatsu knew he was part of the ruse before he self-deleted? I believe so. I don't believe him and Toranaga discussed it ahead of time, and I know that's been up for some debate as well. How much did Hiromatsu know when he went into that scene? And again, at first I thought maybe him and Toranaga discussed it off camera. Maybe it was a scene that we just didn't see. But the more I started to watch that episode and the more I started to hear everybody else's take on it, I definitely think that Hiromatsu and Toranaga did not discuss it ahead of time. I think Hiromatsu just realized and recognized in that moment exactly what Toranaga needed, and they were almost kind of telepathically linked in, on the same wavelength there, where they didn't even need to speak to each other to know what they needed to do. So that's kind of my takeaway from that scene. I don't think they discussed it ahead of time. I just think Hiromatsu knew in that moment exactly what he needed to do to help Toranaga's plan. That's kind of how I took it anyway. That's kind of how I took it. But again, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. As Dane Marie says, yes, you guys are all absolutely awesome. And we hope you guys enjoyed these discussions as well. And thank you so much, Khaleesi, Mandy, and everybody else in the chat. You guys have been so freaking awesome. Have enjoyed this so much tonight. I have subscribed and joined the Discord. Well, that is awesome as well. We definitely try to coordinate from our Discord. So anytime we have a stream coming up, or a watch party coming up, there will always be a notification in the Discord before we notify anything else. So being in that Discord, you will definitely always be apprised with everything that we are going to be doing going forward, whether it's Shogun material, House of the Dragon material, From material, or anything else that we end up covering here on the channel. So thank you for joining the Discord, and big thank you to everybody who has joined the Discord lately and everybody who has been hanging out with us here in the live chats lately. You guys have been so freaking awesome. This series has been such a breath of fresh air. I like to call this series a breath of fresh air in a sea of shite that is current television. And it really has been, it just really has been so phenomenal. And it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good if we didn't have these streams to kind of discuss everything with all of you guys in the chat. You guys coming back week after week and hanging out with us, giving your thoughts and your opinions and sharing your time with us. I know how valuable time is these days, especially on weekdays, on Mondays and Wednesdays when we normally go live. It's not always the easiest to get free time. People have families and kids and jobs. I totally understand that. So I really, really appreciate everybody who has taken the time to come and hang out with us and share your thoughts and opinions on all of this stuff. These streams truly, truly are the highlight of my week every week. I can't thank you guys enough.
Oh, yeah. I look forward to these streams. Honestly, like, there's so much fun. Even when we first started, like, it was just fun coming in here and just chatting about stuff like the shows we all love and really getting to talk about it, right? Because you talk about some of the stuff with some people and they look at you like you're crazy, but to talk with people who really enjoy it like you do, even if we don't agree, like that's still so much fun to say, oh, okay, well, oh, I didn't even see it that way. Wow.
Yep.
It's so fun.
It is, and again, that's what makes these discussions the best. It's seeing everybody else's point of view, and I know Ravener and I, Scarlett and Dana and I. One thing that we have tried to made sure we do in every one of these streams is make it so it's not just us up here talking to each other and not acknowledging the audience. We want to know what you guys are thinking as well. We want the chat to be just as a part of the conversation as we are here on the panel, and that's why I cannot thank each and every one of you enough, because you guys have been so forthcoming with sharing your thoughts, your theories, all of it. And that's what these streams are for. We want to hear your point of view on things. We want to know what you guys think. It's not just about us up here talking. We want to know what you guys think as well. And you guys are just as big a part of this show as we are up here on panel. And again, I cannot thank each and every one of you enough for taking the time to come and hang out with us for a bit.
Yeah.
These,
and we were just like you guys. Me and Scarlett were just like you guys. We were just people in the chat who came along, and Jeremy opened up so many doors. So like we were regular people. We were not YouTubers. Me and Scarlett were just regular people like you guys. So it's fun to see how much he includes the chat.
It's all about the chat. Yeah, it's all about creating a good and fun kind of atmosphere where we can kind of have a place to discuss all of these things, whether we agree on things, whether we disagree on things. It's this chat is definitely a place where you guys can hopefully come and feel comfortable voicing your opinion, whether it's an opinion that agrees or disagrees with us. We want you guys to feel comfortable enough to share any opinion you guys have here in the chat, because that's what these streams are for. We want to hear what you guys think. But as Kai says, one last sake pour for Shogun. Cheers, bruv. And again, big cheers to each and every one of you guys and gals in the chat and watching this, whether live or on the replay, any part of the world that you guys are in. It's always awesome to see where you guys are tuning in from, whether it's good morning, good night, good afternoon. I hope everybody is staying safe out there and having a phenomenal rest of your day or night. And until next time, everybody, we will see you in the chat and in the Discord. And again, anyone who hasn't joined the Discord, definitely hop on in there. We will be doing tons of stuff. We are going to be doing some 80s Shogun coverage while we wait for House of the Dragon Season 2 to come along. We're still, we still got a little bit of ways before House of the Dragon Season 2 comes, just under 2 months. So we do have plenty of time to kind of dive into some of the 80s Shogun series and kind of compare and contrast the two. So that is definitely what we are going to be doing here on the channel over the next few weeks. We will probably try and set up some kind of 80s Shogun watch party directly in the Discord, so anyone who hasn't seen the 80s version can catch up, so you guys can join in on the conversation as well. And of course, I will be announcing that when we know exactly what we're doing, so if you are on the Discord, you will be notified. But again, big thank you to each and every one of you for coming out here and joining us week in and week out. And of course, a huge thank you to my awesome co-hosts and panelists who have been joining us every week as well. Ravener, Scarlett, Dana, thank you guys so much for being a part of these shows. You guys have been so awesome.
Oh man, we love hanging out here with you guys.
Yeah.
I would be nowhere else.
Yes, we enjoy it. I enjoy it. We have fun, you guys. So no worries. We love it.
And I do too. And again, it's big thank you to all of you that make these streams what they are. And hopefully you guys choose to stay on here and continue the journey with us as we do translate over to House of the Dragon Season 2, which is just under 2 months away. We are huge House of the Dragon fanatics as well. A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite book series of all time. So if you guys have not seen House of the Dragon Season 1, definitely be on the lookout, because we are going to be doing a House of the Dragon Season 1 rewatch party directly in the Discord. So if you haven't seen Season 1 of House of the Dragon and you want to come and catch up on it, that would be a perfect place. And I promise you, if you are a Game of Thrones fan and the ending of Game of Thrones left a bitter taste in your mouth, House of the Dragon Season 1 goes a long way at erasing that bad taste, because House of the Dragon Season 1 is so good. And Season 2 is going to be even better by all accounts. So hopefully you guys come and join us for the House of the Dragon streams. And of course, we are going to be covering from Season 3 as well when that comes out later on in the year as well. But again, until next time, I want to give a big thank you to each and every one of you guys, and we will see you on the next one.
Death is in our air, in sea, in earth. It can come for us at any moment. To show your true heart is to risk your life. Enemies are everywhere and friends nowhere. Life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose. Remember, we live and we die. We control nothing beyond that.